Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Stewart. Lauren Stewart was born on January 9, 1973. She has spent most of her life in Michigan. Lauren pursued her passions as a model and actress, attending workshops and interacting with photographers to further her career. Those who know her describe her as charming and easygoing. Lauren is passionate about her acting and modeling work. She enjoys new experiences, learning from others and sharing ideas, seeing life as an adventure and striving to live life to the fullest. Lauren is married to Daniel Stewart, a senior software architect at the University of Michigan, where he works predicting heart attacks. Prior to his current role, Daniel spent several years in the tech industry as a Coda developer. Lauren and Daniel were devout Christians in the Jehovah's Witnesses sect for a long time until 2013, when they decided to leave Christianity. Lauren and Daniel have 2 children, Stephen Stewart, 27, a data solutions architect and computer scientist, and Bethany Stewart, 24, a talented artist and graphic designer. At 45, Lauren seems to have the perfect life, a loving husband, well-educated children, a thriving modeling career, and a beautiful home in Keio Harbor. But deep inside, Lauren struggled with the emotional pain of being shunned and rejected by the Jehovah's Witness community she grew up in. The strict rules and practices of shunning former members took their toll on her. Lauren and Daniel's decision to leave the faith was a difficult one. The Laurens remained devout Jehovah's Witnesses until 2013, but the church's strict rules posed problems for their children's futures. Celebrating holidays was forbidden and higher education was prohibited, with the threat of expulsion for non-compliance. When Daniel asked for his children to attend university, he was warned that defying church policy would result in expulsion, which was distressing for the family as it meant complete social isolation, even from relatives. Lauren's family made the decision to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses after careful consideration. While the decision initially seemed right, they soon faced strong opposition from their community, which became unbearable, especially for Lauren. She found that even simple tasks like going shopping became difficult due to hostile looks and hurtful comments from former friends. Although these comments were not directed at her, they were said loudly enough for her to hear. Living in a small community of 3,300 residents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses, Lauren's family faced a harsh reality, with prominent church members constantly reminding Lauren of her outcast status. The emotional stress eventually became too much to bear. Lauren turned to exercise to regain her health. She worked out regularly and made it her routine, which led to a dramatic change. Lauren became a fitness trainer and found success as a model. Despite being rejected by the church, Lauren appeared optimistic and confident to those around her. However, behind her pleasant exterior, Lauren was secretly struggling with chronic depression. She had been battling this condition for some time, and it had gotten worse since being ostracized by the church. As a result, Lauren often hid her true feelings behind a fake smile. Lauren's family was drowning in debt, on the brink of bankruptcy. Overwhelmed by the pressure of her own financial difficulties and emotional pain, Lauren devised a plan to solve all her problems at once. She began researching ways to end her life and videos on how to use a pistol. On February 15, 2018, Lauren left a heartbreaking note on the dining room table, meticulously cleaned the house, and sent messages to loved ones and Daniel's boss. And finally, Lauren flipped through all the family photos on her desk. Lauren texted her husband's boss at 9:24 a.m. saying that her husband Daniel had died in an accident and that she would provide more information later. However, she did not respond to her boss's subsequent messages. At 5:07 p.m. that same day, Lauren texted her cousin, saying that she was taking her family with her so they wouldn't have to suffer. She said that they would sleep until Christ was resurrected and hoped that her cousin would do better than her. Her cousin was frightened by the message and told Lauren not to harm herself or her family. Lauren had been suffering from mental health issues in recent months that her family had not known about. She had a gun and made the tragic decision to use it to kill her loved ones. Lauren's first victim was her husband, Daniel, 47, who was shot in the head while trying to escape from the basement where he was relaxing. Lauren used a pillow as a silencer to muffle the sound of the gunshot. After Daniel was shot, Lauren went upstairs to her daughter Bethany's sleeping room. Lauren shot her at point-blank range, instantly killing Bethany. Next, her son Stephen, who had his own house on the other side of town, Lauren tricked Stephen into coming to her house. When Stephen was busy with the task his mother had assigned him, his back turned, Lauren shot him at close range. The horror did not stop there. Lauren killed the family dog, placing its body in the bathtub. A neighbor heard these gunshots but thought someone was slamming the door. When the house became a cold morgue, Lauren meticulously cleaned it. Then Lauren used the gun to kill herself. Lauren's cousin, who had been trying to contact her, became concerned when she did not respond to their messages. The cousin decided to visit Lauren's home the following morning, February 16th, with a friend. When no one answered the door, they contacted the police. Upon arriving at the house, the police found the kitchen to be tidy and well organized, with a stocked refrigerator and handwritten labels on various items. A calendar was also hanging on the refrigerator. However, police discovered the family dog dead in the bathtub. This made police more cautious, initially fearing the possibility of an active shooter. As they continued to search the house, they found Stephen Stewart on the floor, shot while sitting on a chair in another room. In a bedroom, the police discovered Bethany's lifeless body, shot while she was asleep. A pillow had been used to muffle the sound of the gunshot, and the pillowcase showed signs of the shooting. The police also found Daniel Stewart's body on the basement floor in front of a couch, with his right hand still in his jeans pocket. Elsewhere in the house, Lauren was found at the foot of the stairs, with a pistol next to her and a gunshot wound between her eyes. 2 notes were discovered on the dining room table, one addressed to the medical examiner, the other a suicide note revealing Lauren's inner struggles. Lauren's note explained that she felt she had allowed evil into her heart by rejecting God's love. She believed that by killing her family, she could spare them from suffering. Through interviews with relatives, friends, and neighbors, it became clear that the couple had become reclusive after leaving the Jehovah's Witness church. Lauren's past struggles, particularly her battle with depression, were compounded by the stress of motherhood. Family members also revealed that Lauren, who was one of 11 siblings, had a history of depression that likely contributed to her actions. Lauren has become increasingly obsessed with her faith in recent years. Her family, including her father and sister, have not spoken to her in years. Lauren's mother died when she was 13. The tragic event has left a lasting impact on those close to the family. Joyce Taylor, a longtime friend, believes the murders were a direct result of the family's rejection by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Joyce Taylor and other former members reveal the harsh reality of leaving the faith. When someone leaves the Jehovah's Witnesses, they are often shunned by their own family members who remain in the church. This severe form of shunning can take a heavy emotional toll. According to Joyce Taylor, Lauren and Daniel's desire to give their children a college education conflicted with the church's teachings, which discourage such pursuits. This clash between their aspirations and the church's rigid doctrines ultimately led to a tragic outcome. The family was shunned in every way possible. As Joyce Taylor explained, when you're raised a Jehovah's Witness, the church controls many aspects of your life, including your friendships and associations. If you go against these rules, you risk being disfellowshipped or shunned. Joyce Taylor stormed into a Kingdom Hall meeting in Union Lake, seizing the opportunity to confront the congregation about a recent tragedy. She passionately criticized the gathering, her voice filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. "5 years ago, you withdrew your support from a small family," Joyce Taylor exclaimed. "They had no one else to turn to, but you turned them away and shunned them. Why? Because they wanted to raise their children as they saw fit. Just 2 days ago, 4 people died because of your alienation," Joyce Taylor said. Her words sent shockwaves through the room, forcing her to push away members of her congregation as she expressed her pent-up frustration. Police investigations into Lauren's family revealed that she, her husband, and her sons were all using cannabis. Further investigation revealed that Lauren's horrific actions were the result of a combination of factors. These included feelings of loneliness, strained relationships with family and friends due to their differing religious views. These factors combined to add to her pain, ultimately leading her to commit a horrific act. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, but his family moved to Cedar City, Utah, when he was young, after his father finished dental school. Growing up, Michael was an active boy who enjoyed playing baseball, basketball, and soccer. He achieved the rank of Eagle Scout and performed well academically. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska during the summer, where he quickly rose to the position of line manager, overseeing more than a dozen men due to his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then served a mission trip to South Brazil as a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which further deepened his faith and strengthened his bond with his religious community. Upon returning to the United States, Michael pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, he met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love, getting married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael seemed like the perfect family man to those who didn't know him. He was always involved in his kids' lives, coaching their sports teams, attending school concerts, and spending quality time with them, whether it was sledding or working on projects in the garage. But on January 4, 2023, the illusion he created around his family life shattered. That day, police found 8 dead bodies at the Haight residence, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned and confused. When Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work, their colleagues became worried and alerted the police to check on the family's welfare at their home in Enoch. The officers arrived at the Haight residence, but no one answered the door. As they walked around the property, it looked like nobody was home. Knowing the family had 5 kids, the police contacted the Iron County School District to see if any of the children were in school that day, but it turned out none of the kids were present when the police arrived at the Haight home. The officers searched the premises to make sure there was no immediate danger, and after a thorough search, confirmed that nobody needed medical attention, and there were no signs of an active threat. The detectives arrived at the crime scene shortly after it was declared. Upon entering the main bedroom, they saw 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach with his head turned to the left, one arm under his head on a pillow, and a blanket covering part of his body. His sister Tasha was similarly positioned with only part of her body covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, they found Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, just like her daughter and grandson. In Bry's room, the detectives found the 12-year-old girl lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Amon's room, they discovered the 7-year-old boy lying face down in the corner of the room, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was found in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed with her head resting on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, her head resting on a pillow and her body covered by the blanket. The detectives discovered Michael Haight's body in the exercise room in the basement of his home, lying on top of a sleeping bag. All 8 victims, including his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children, were found dead with gunshot wounds. Given the circumstances, it didn't take long for the detectives to identify Michael Haight as the primary suspect. They believed he had killed his family members before taking his own life. A neighbor's testimony played a crucial role in helping the detectives reconstruct the timeline of the crime. The neighbor recalled waking up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and hearing a loud bang, similar to fireworks, as she exited her room. However, she felt annoyed because it was past the permitted date for fireworks in the neighborhood. She then heard 2 more bangs in quick succession, followed by a short pause. This pattern continued, with brief pauses before each subsequent bang, except for a longer pause before the final one. Based on the neighbor's statement and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, detectives theorized that the loud noises she had heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events of that night. They suspected that Michael Hatch committed the brutal murders during this specific time frame. During the investigation into the Hatch family murders, detectives discovered that an unnamed person outside the family had reported abuse to the Utah Division of Child and Family Services in 2020. This individual claimed that 14-year-old Macy confided in them about her fear of her father, sparking a deeper investigation into the Hatch household. After receiving the DCFS report, Macy and her parents were questioned separately. During Macy's interview, the investigator uncovered disturbing information. Macy revealed that her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she feared he would kill her. She disclosed that the violent attacks began in 2017, including an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. When detectives questioned Michael Hatch, he claimed he had never physically harmed his daughter. He downplayed the incidents Macy described, saying they were simply misunderstandings. Michael attributed his emotional turmoil to 2 recent events: the death of his father and his brother's divorce. He stated that, in his distress, he took out his frustration on his older daughter, Tasha. Tasha chose not to pursue criminal charges against Michael. Similarly, the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office decided not to press charges, deeming the case insufficient to meet the prosecution requirements set by the statute. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which revealed that her relationship with Michael did not pose a significant threat to her life. Nevertheless, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months following the case's opening. Through conversations with Tasha's friends, detectives formed a different impression of Michael Hatch than the one he presented to the community. Tasha's friends revealed that whenever they visited, they would often chat with her, while the kitchen water was running to mask their conversation, as Tasha suspected Michael was spying on her discussions. They also helped Tasha with housework during their visits so Michael wouldn't have anything to criticize her about. Tasha's friends disclosed that whenever she texted them, she would respond with brief, upbeat messages, likely aware that Michael might read them. They believed she did this to maintain a positive facade for Michael's benefit, implying that everything was fine in their marriage. Detectives found Michael displayed controlling behavior towards his wife, Tasha. He took away her car keys and phone to keep her from leaving. They also suspected him after he overreacted to her buying a $30 rug from Walmart, accusing her of excessive spending despite the legitimate need. Tasha shared with her friends her concerns that her 7-year-old son, Amon, was increasingly mimicking his father Michael's bad behavior. Whenever she gave Amon an instruction, he would respond by saying that it was not his job. This worried Tasha because it revealed Amon's growing lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. She mentioned that Michael frequently disregarded or ignored her instructions, and Amon seemed to be following his example. In 2022, Tasha prioritized self-care by getting her nails done despite her busy schedule. However, her husband Michael wasn't supportive, imposing strict rules on her independence. After her appointment, Tasha felt confident and told Michael she'd make it a monthly routine, sparking his anger over the potential cost. To address Michael's concerns, Tasha explained calmly that her monthly self-care expenses came out to $25. Despite this, Michael remained skeptical, claiming that by spending money on her nails, Tasha was essentially taking away from their children's basic needs. This stance stemmed from his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. At the same time, Tasha began to prioritize her self-care and eventually started losing weight, a significant change after years of her husband calling her fat and ugly. Michael became angry about her weight loss, accusing Tasha of cheating on him as he struggled to explain the sudden change in her appearance. As Michael's controlling behavior escalated, he tried to manipulate Tasha regarding her weight loss. He begged her to stop, fearing that other men might find her attractive. Underlying this request were his deep-seated insecurities and desire for complete control over his wife's body and actions. Michael exhibited a frugal attitude during the holiday season, despite earning a significant income. He allocated only $100 for each of their 5 children to buy gifts, whereas Tasha made sure they had a fulfilling Christmas. However, Michael refused to provide additional funds for his wife and children, justifying his stance by claiming that he didn't see the need to give them more of what he believed was rightfully his. Michael controlled every aspect of Tasha's life, including her cleaning and childcare habits. He insisted on using baby wipes, claiming they were eco-friendly and cost-effective, but this caused Tasha stress and compromised her comfort and hygiene. If she didn't comply, Michael threatened trouble, leaving her fearful and submissive. According to Tasha's friends, she revealed to them that Michael was mean to her throughout their marriage, but he didn't mistreat their children until the late 2010s. However, as time passed, the abuse towards Macy worsened, causing her to contemplate suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for Macy, demanding she maintain straight A's despite her struggles. The pressure to meet his expectations became overwhelming for Macy, who was already dealing with the emotional weight of her father's abuse. Macy's friends shared another disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael came home and found Macy resting her head on her mother's lap. He became enraged and ordered Macy to get up and clean her room. This event left Macy deeply shaken, as she remembered gazing into her father's eyes and seeing hatred and evil staring back. Detectives found another instance where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael's warnings. Michael blamed his wife Tasha for their kids' misbehavior, calling them the worst in the world. He berated Tasha in front of their kids, even calling her fat and ugly. Tasha realized she needed to escape her 20-year marriage to Michael after a distressing incident exposed his abusive nature and temper. Seeing the harm it was causing their kids, she knew she had to leave. Tasha decided to divorce Michael after over 20 years, prioritizing their children's well-being over their marriage. On Dec 21, 2022, she initiated proceedings, but asked to delay serving papers until after the holiday season, wanting one last normal Christmas for their 5 kids before the separation. Michael got divorce papers at his office on Dec 27th. He called Tasha, acting normal, asking about her day, like nothing was wrong. He told her to leave the house, but wanted the kids to stay. Tasha refused, insisting on taking the kids with her. Tasha took the children to her mother's house in Lynn, Utah. That evening, Michael arrived at his mother-in-law's house and tried to persuade Tasha to go for a ride with him. But Tasha declined, telling her friends she had a bad feeling about going anywhere alone with Michael. After Tasha filed for divorce, her mom Gail moved in to help. However, Michael made things worse by moving into the basement fitness room instead of leaving the house. Tasha told her friends she had found a discrepancy in their children's savings accounts, which held $220,000. What she discovered shocked her. Michael had transferred the money out of the accounts without her knowledge or permission. After her father's death, Tasha inherited several firearms, including hunting rifles and a handgun. When she checked her house in January 2023, she realized all the guns were gone. Further investigation revealed Michael had taken the weapons, leaving Tasha and her family defenseless in case of an emergency. Macy, Michael and Tasha's eldest child, confided in her friends that she would welcome her parents' divorce. She longed for the peace that would come with her father's absence from the home. Macy even kept a secret phone in her room, which she used to record her father's erratic behavior, hoping to gather evidence to support the divorce. However, Tasha found the phone and hid it away. Macy's younger sister, Briley, had a troubled home life due to the constant drama. To escape this, Briley would often visit her neighbor's house, where she found comfort with their grandchildren. Briley confided in a friend that she was relieved about her parents' upcoming divorce. She had even bought some new books, but was too afraid to tell her father, fearing he would become angry. Tasha met her lawyer on January 3, 2023, to discuss her divorce from abusive husband Michael. She felt relieved he'd moved to the basement due to his volatile behavior. Asked if she'd ever feared for her or her children's safety, Tasha said she never had. In hindsight, Tasha's optimism was tragically misplaced. The police investigation was harrowing, piecing together a chilling sequence of events. A disturbing Google search on December 30th stood out, revealing Michael's firearms queries just days before the deadly shooting, painting a chilling picture of his intentions. The search results revealed alarming questions, such as inquiries about how loud a 9mm gunshot is, what a gunshot sounds like, what to do if gunshots are heard near one's house, if a single gunshot in the neighborhood at night would be immediately recognized, and if one would be brave enough to call the police, how loud a gunshot in the house would be, and if a neighbor would hear a gunshot in the garage, and how loud a 40mm pistol is. Michael's suicide note said he'd rather rot in hell than endure his wife's controlling behavior. He felt desperate, frustrated, and trapped, repeatedly asking for help that never came. Determined to end the manipulation, he refused to be a burden to society. The case's details have shocked many, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated, carefully planned to catch his family off guard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cherie Miller. Bruce and Cherie were both born and raised in Flint, Michigan, a city that was once a thriving hub of the Midwest auto industry, but had since fallen on hard times. Cherie Peck Keithley Miller was born on October 13, 1971, and by her own account, she had a deeply troubled childhood. Without a father figure in her life, Cherie grew up in a trailer with her mother, who struggled with addiction and had a string of unstable relationships with men. These men often abused Cherie, starting when she was just 3 or 4 years old. By the time she was 16, Cherie was on her own, and at 17 she got married, became pregnant, and had a child. However, the marriage didn't last, and she remarried and divorced again. Her second husband, Tribby, was convicted of second-degree child abuse after brutally assaulting his own child, causing multiple skull fractures. Tribby was also accused of abusing Cherie's 6-year-old daughter, but he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Cherie seemed to have a pattern of attracting the wrong kind of men, always searching for someone who could provide her with financial security and emotional stability. By the time she was 26, Cherie found herself a single mother of 3, working multiple jobs to make ends meet, including a position at a nursing home and selling Mary Kay cosmetics. While she wasn't a conventional beauty, Cherie was charismatic and attractive. In 1997, she took a job as an accountant at B&A Auto Salvage, a company owned by 47-year-old Bruce Miller. At this point, Cherie saw Bruce as the kind of stable, successful partner who could finally provide her with the comfort and security she had always been missing. Bruce Leroy Miller was born on July 26, 1951. In his younger years, he worked at General Motors, a common career path for many Flint residents. After leaving GM, Bruce went on to own and operate an auto junkyard, where he would accept old cars and resell their parts. Bruce had 3 marriages and enjoyed activities such as racing and socializing. He was known for his generosity and openness. Initially, Bruce showed no romantic interest in Cherie Keithley, his new employee, but rather offered her support as a single mother facing difficult circumstances. However, Cherie eventually caught his attention, and despite their 20-year age difference, an office romance blossomed. Bruce was flattered by the attention of a younger woman, and they quickly moved from dating to living together. The couple got married on April 23, 1999, in one of Las Vegas's chapels, just 4 months into their relationship. After the wedding, Cherie and her children moved in with Bruce, providing her with the stability she had long sought. Bruce's brother, Chuck Miller, revealed on the TV show Snapped that Cherie often praised Bruce, saying he was the best thing that had ever happened to her, as he provided her with a normal life and the means to make her happy. Chuck's wife, Judy, added that Bruce was smitten with the young, attractive blonde, whom he considered the perfect wife. While friends voiced concerns about Cherie's excessive spending habits, which went beyond her means, Bruce chose to ignore it. Cherie would later admit that she had been trying to fill a constant void by instantly maxing out her credit cards and spending all the cash she could find. Despite her friends' misgivings, Bruce remained unconcerned about his wife's spending habits. Cherie, a hard worker, had a job as a Mary Kay cosmetic saleswoman, allowing her to sell products to customers at home or while traveling across the country to manage her accounts. In fact, Bruce even bought her a computer to support her work. The turning point came with this purchase. In 1999, Cherie Miller stumbled upon adult chat rooms while using her home computer to research a vacation destination. At the time, social networking didn't exist, and text messaging was not common. Instead, people connected with each other in online chat rooms, some of which were adult in nature and allowed users to flirt anonymously, share fantasies, and engage in virtual romances. According to friends, Bruce was aware of his wife's online flirting, but didn't see it as a problem. He loved his wife, was happily married, and planned to adopt her children. He preferred to trust her rather than letting suspicions overshadow their family life. Cherie soon became comfortable in the virtual world and began regularly logging into chat rooms, sharing her deepest sexual fantasies with strangers under various aliases. Detective Kevin Shanlian, who investigated the murder case, testified that Cherie had at least 25 different aliases. In 2016, Cherie admitted that she was glued to the computer. She explained that Bruce worked at the store and had his own business, so he was often away. Cherie spent hours flirting online, driven by a need to control everything. She obsessively controlled people who trusted her, treating every man and every relationship like a new level in a video game, each one more challenging than the last. Among the men Cherie Miller met online was Jerry Cassidy, who used the pseudonym Rena Dudes. Born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri, Jerry was a married man who raised a son, enjoyed deer hunting with his brothers, and had a dream of becoming an FBI agent while working as a homicide detective. However, when he reported corruption involving falsified records to a coworker, he faced retaliation, was demoted, and eventually forced to resign after 9 years of service. Despite doing the right thing, the experience ended his career. Depression, drinking, and substance abuse followed, which led to the breakdown of his marriage. Later, Jerry got his life back on track, moved to Reno, Nevada, and became a security guard at Harrah's Casino. In his free time, he frequented chat rooms where he met Cherie Miller. Their online correspondence turned passionate, and in July 1999, they met in person in Reno, where Cherie claimed to be attending a Mary Kay convention with a friend. The online romance blossomed into a physical affair, and Jerry thought his life was finally taking a turn for the better. Cherie presented herself as a wealthy businesswoman living with a disabled husband who was seeking a discreet sexual encounter. Jerry believed her, as his friend Carol Slaughter would later recall. At the time, Jerry was at a low point in his life. His marriage had ended, and he was in a new neighborhood with no friends. He became deeply infatuated with Cherie, telling Carol Slaughter that Cherie was exceptional in the bedroom. Throughout the summer and fall, Cherie used her cosmetics business as a front for frequent trips to Reno, where she would secretly meet with Jerry. The two exchanged explicit emails and instant messages, including intimate videos, and even went so far as to rename their online accounts, with Cherie calling herself Jerry's Fool and Jerry calling himself Cherie's Fool. Despite his background as a cop, Jerry seemingly failed to notice any red flags, blinded as he was by Cherie's professions of love. Whether due to naivety, flaws, or emotional vulnerability, Jerry proved to be an easy target for Cherie's manipulation. She quickly wove a web of deceit, convincing him that he needed to kill her husband. The impact on Jerry was evident to those around him. His friends noted that after Cherie entered the picture, he became increasingly erratic, exhibiting symptoms akin to bipolar disorder. He would be overly excited and energetic before her visits, only to plummet into painful depression after she left. As early as September, Cherie claimed to be pregnant with Cassidy's child, sending Jerry fake evidence, including doctored photos, a forged positive pregnancy test, and even fake belly pictures. Shortly after, she feigned that her husband Bruce had discovered her infidelity, beating her and causing her to miscarry. Unbeknownst to Jerry, Cherie had actually undergone a tubal ligation in 1995, rendering her sterile. Jerry had no reason to doubt her lies, and so he believed every word. After losing the baby, Cherie announced that she was pregnant again, this time with twins. Jerry begged her to leave her abusive husband Bruce, take the children, and come live with him. Cherie feared for her life and Jerry's, claiming Bruce had mafia connections and wouldn't let them leave. Despite her fears, Cherie continued to secretly meet Jerry in Reno. During one of these meetings, Jerry was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct at a casino, which temporarily halted their online communication. After his release, Jerry decided to protect Cherie from further danger by distancing himself from her and returning to Missouri to reconcile with his family. The online relationship continued, with Cherie sending Jerry photos of her ultrasound and growing belly. On November 5, 1999, Jerry received an ominous email, allegedly from Bruce, threatening to prevent the twins' birth. Alarmed, Jerry tried to contact Cherie but received a message from her hours later, saying she had to leave for a few days. The next day, Jerry received a message from Bruce, revealing that he had forced Cherie to have an abortion. The message included disturbing photos of a battered Cherie. Jerry had reached his breaking point. The tragic deaths of his twin children at the hands of Bruce Miller had left him devastated and consumed by anger. He held Bruce responsible not only for the loss of his 3 children, but also for the suffering of the woman he loved. The next day, November 8th, Jerry confided in Cherie, declaring his intention to kill her husband. Together, they began to orchestrate a plan to take his life. They carefully mapped out routes, identified ideal parking spots, and pinpointed the perfect location and time to dispose of the body. Jerry then embarked on the long journey from his home to Michigan. As Bruce prepared to leave work, he received a call from Cherie, following their plan. She asked him to pick up a pizza on his way home, distracting him from the impending danger. Unaware of the threat lurking behind him, Bruce failed to notice Jerry approaching, shotgun in hand, before he pulled the trigger. After committing the crime, Jerry returned home while Cherie set the next part of their plan in motion. She contacted Bruce's brother, Chuck, pretending to be worried about her husband's prolonged absence, and requested that he drive to the junkyard to check on him. When Chuck arrived, he found his brother's lifeless body on the floor, lying in a pool of blood, with a close-range shotgun wound to the chest. Witnesses reported that Cherie reacted with screams and tears upon learning of Bruce's death. The crime scene was promptly discovered, but the perpetrator had left behind no trace or evidence. Investigators found that Bruce typically carried large sums of cash, leading them to initially suspect that his death might have been the result of a botched robbery, since his wallet was missing. Suspicion fell on John Hutchinson, a friend and employee who had recently borrowed $2,000 from Bruce. Police questioned Hutchinson, searched his home, and seized his weapons, but he denied any involvement. Although Hutchinson failed a polygraph test, the investigation proved inconclusive, and he was eventually released. A theory that the murder was committed to falsify vehicle identification numbers was explored, but none of the leads panned out, and the case was eventually closed. In the meantime, Cherie's behavior seemed suspicious to Judy Miller, the sister of Bruce, the victim. Just 2 days after her husband's death, Cherie was seen dancing happily in a bar in Otisville, Michigan. 2 weeks later, she had already started dating a local delivery boy named Jeff Foster, not Jerry Cassidy, her supposed lover. Jerry Cassidy had expected to be with Cherie after the murder, but she started to distance herself from him instead. A month after the murder, Cherie moved her new boyfriend into her house and cut ties with Jerry, leaving him heartbroken. It was likely at this point that Jerry realized he had murdered an innocent man due to Cherie's manipulation, and feelings of guilt overwhelmed him. He transformed from Cherie's lover to an investigator and discovered that all the accusations were fabricated by Cherie herself. On February 11, 2000, Jerry took his own life in his apartment in Odessa, Missouri, using a .22 caliber rifle. His body was discovered in a chair with an open Bible on his lap. The Bible was open to Matthew 5, which contains the passage, "Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be liable to judgment." It seemed that Jerry had judged himself, confessed his guilt, and taken his own life as punishment. Cassidy's mother revealed in an interview a few days after the body was removed that while cleaning the apartment, family members found a briefcase containing 3 suicide notes and an envelope attached to the outside. Jerry's motive was revenge against the woman who had broken his heart. In his confession, the former detective explained that he had killed Bruce Miller because he believed at the time that Bruce had abused Cherie and was responsible for the deaths of his 3 children. However, the letter also revealed that Cherie Miller had lied to Jerry about Bruce's behavior. On February 22, 2000, police arrested Cherie Miller as she arrived at the airport with her boyfriend, Jeff Foster, after a trip to Reno. She was charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Prosecutors believed that Cherie was a skilled manipulator who had convinced Jerry to kill her husband under false pretenses. Despite the evidence against her, Cherie maintained her innocence to her deceased husband's family. On December 12, 2000, the trial of Cherie Miller began in the state of Michigan, generating widespread national attention due to the unusual nature of the internet-related crime. The public's interest was exceptionally high. The prosecution presented thousands of messages exchanged between Cherie and Jerry, revealing the numerous lies she had told. Cherie claimed she had undergone a fallopian tube ligation years prior, and therefore could not be pregnant with Jerry's children, and that she had never been abused. However, the prosecution alleged that Cherie wanted her husband Bruce dead for financial gain, as a divorce would not have provided her with sufficient money. In contrast, the defense argued that Cherie received only a minimal sum after Bruce's death and would have enjoyed a more affluent lifestyle had she remained married. The defense also suggested that Jerry Cassidy was seeking revenge as a spurned lover and had fabricated evidence against Cherie. Cherie told the jury that her online sexual communications with Jerry were merely a fantasy, and that she had lied about her pregnancy to help him cope with depression and about the abuse to deter him from contacting her. Cherie vehemently denied writing the messages that described the crime, implying that Jerry had forged them using his expertise as a homicide detective. However, the police discovered evidence of the messages on Cherie's computer. The online correspondence played a crucial role in the trial. Miller was convicted on December 22nd, receiving a life sentence for murder and 54 to 81 years for conspiracy. In 2007, while incarcerated, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health issues. Miller began treatment and filed an appeal, even getting married for the fourth time. Michael DeNoia saw Miller's story on the news and was captivated by her charm. He wrote to her, and in 2008, he visited her in prison, proposing during the visit. Although some reports claim they got married in April 2008, there is no evidence to support this. In 2008, Miller's conviction was overturned on appeal, and she was released from prison in 2009. A federal judge ruled that Jerry's suicide letter should not have been considered evidence, as Cassidy was deceased and the defense could not cross-examine him. The judge ordered a new trial and released Miller on bail. In 2012, Cherie was returned to jail to resume serving her original sentence, following a court ruling that re-evaluated the admissibility of the suicide letter. Having spent 3 years outside, Cherie continued to proclaim her innocence. In 2016, Cherie Miller unexpectedly confessed to her role in her husband's death in a 4-page letter to a judge. Many saw this as a bid for sympathy or profit. Cherie wrote that being sent back to prison after 3 years of freedom triggered her admission. She was devastated to leave her daughter and granddaughter behind, and the full weight of her actions hit her. She described her husband as a great man who only loved and wanted to adopt her children, and she was filled with remorse for ordering his killing. Cherie gave a 2022 TV interview, confessing Bruce wasn't mob-connected and didn't abuse her. She faked bruises and ultrasound scans to control Jerry, fearing Bruce would discover her true identity. Cherie knew Jerry's depression and had evidence, but thought she could manipulate the jury. She rejected a 15-year plea bargain, leading to a life sentence. Now incarcerated, Cherie seeks peace, saying it's hard to face her actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sean Eckerd. Donna and Samuel Eckerd, who came from a long line of family relationships, tied the knot. Between them, they had 6 grown children from previous marriages. After facing numerous challenges in their early marriages, they found comfort and solace in each other. The couple decided to settle down in San Diego, California. They rented a spacious family home and never missed attending church services on weekends. A few years after their move, Donna gave birth to a son named Stanley, and 2 years later, Sean was born. Donna dedicated her life to raising her sons and taking care of the home. As a result, Stanley and Sean grew up in a loving and nurturing environment. They both attended a reputable local school, and every weekend, the entire family would participate in church activities without fail. The Eckerd family was a tight-knit one, with the adult children regularly keeping in touch and gathering together for family holidays, despite being scattered across the continent. Sean was a sociable and lively individual, boasting a charismatic personality that effortlessly drew people to him. He was an attentive listener and had a talent for empathy, making it easy for him to form friendships. In contrast, Stanley was more introverted and cautious around new people and experiences, which made socializing a bit more challenging for him. Despite their differing personalities and age gap, the brothers shared a common circle of friends and classmates. Unwaveringly loyal, they looked out for each other, often acting as one unit. As they grew up, they developed into well-mannered and academically successful young men. Their bond was built on trust and mutual respect, with their parents valuing respect above all else. Good-natured teasing between the brothers was commonplace, but always done in a light-hearted and humorous spirit. Donna and Samuel raised their children, instilling in them faith in God and guiding them according to God's laws. As the Eckerd brothers grew up, their lives unfolded naturally. However, their interests gradually diverged, becoming starkly different. Sean, the youngest, developed a passion for music and played in a band, while Stanley, the eldest, became fascinated with martial arts. Each brother's life was filled with vivid experiences and emotions, which they would share with the family in the evenings. Every evening, when the family gathered before dinner, Sean's stories about music, friends, and upcoming plans would dominate the conversation. The family would listen intently to Sean, leaving little time for Stanley to share his own experiences. Stanley felt that he didn't have grand plans or exciting stories to share, let alone friends to brag about. As a result, he humbly listened to his brother's stories, never getting the chance to share his own. On one memorable evening, Sean shared with his family that he had met a neighbor, Mary Jane, a delicate young girl with bright brown eyes and long blonde hair. He was captivated by her and had been drawn to her house by the enchanting piano melodies drifting from her open window. Entranced, he walked into her home without knocking, but his self-assurance and charm helped him to extricate himself from the awkward situation and make a good impression on the girl he was interested in. Although Mary Jane was a few years older than Sean, they were able to maintain a friendly relationship. Sean, being the social butterfly, would often organize picnics, inviting Mary Jane to join in. They spent their time strolling, visiting parks, and taking in the views from observation decks. However, their blossoming adolescent romance was cut short by the harsh realities of the adult world. The Eckerd family received devastating news about the illness of Donna's elderly mother, Sean and Stanley's great-grandmother. In pursuit of a better life, Sean's parents tried to consider the interests of each family member, but their decision ultimately changed the course of their lives. Sean was reluctant to leave his hometown, his friends, and Mary Jane, but the decision had already been made. The Eckards left the city where their children had grown up and moved to a new state. In 2005, they settled in Donna's mother's house in Spring Hill, Florida, starting a fresh chapter. For the whole family, this move felt like a breath of fresh air, as it proved to be the right decision. Sean and Stanley's grandmother was recovering well. Initially, the move was tough on Sean, who missed his band, strolls with Mary Jane, and hangouts in his favorite city. However, Sean's optimistic nature soon took over, and he began to build a new life as vibrant as the one he had left behind. Donna and Samuel found jobs at the Presbyterian Church, where they spent most of their time. Donna looked after the children in the nursery, while Samuel assisted with the chapel. Over time, the brothers reconciled and made new friends together. At their new school, they revived their old life. Sean rejoined the school band, while Stanley attended a martial arts school near their home. Despite their busy schedules, Sean remained obsessed with Mary Jane. Every night, he'd lock himself in his room and talk to her on the phone for hours. Their goodbyes always ended the same way, with Sean promising to visit her once he got his parents' permission. While Sean held on to his first love, the more reserved and modest Stanley struggled to find his place within the family. In an attempt to assert himself, Stanley made a series of poor decisions that would ultimately have devastating consequences for the entire family. In May 2006, Stanley told his parents he was quitting school to focus on martial arts and start a club. However, his extreme enthusiasm led him to associate with the wrong crowd, and he began committing petty fraud and trying illegal drugs. In 2007, his questionable connections landed him in trouble with the law, and he was arrested for stealing and charged with felony fraud. The news of Stanley's misbehavior hit his mother, Donna, hard. She had a heart attack and ended up in the hospital, but a lawyer hired by her sister-in-law helped resolve the situation. The lawyer successfully defended Stanley, highlighting the lack of concrete evidence, which led to a suspended sentence. This experience terrified Stanley, leaving him feeling guilty and withdrawn as he hoped to be understood and accepted by his family. After what happened to Stanley, Sean kept his plans private during the summer vacation. He worked as a waiter, saving money, and left a note for his mom saying he was heading to California to see Mary Jane. The 2-day bus ride seemed endless, with the scenery and time of day changing outside his window. He imagined seeing Mary Jane at the final stop, his heart full of anticipation. The bus pulled up to the final stop, and Sean couldn't wait to see Mary. Through the window, he'd caught a glimpse of her bright smile and her long hair, which she was tucking behind her ears. They shared a special connection, having spent some of the happiest days of their lives together, often reminiscing about their carefree high school days. It was during one of their strolls that Sean first confessed his love to Mary, and to his delight, she felt the same way. As they sat on a bench, Sean suddenly felt dizzy. His vision turned dark, and he lost consciousness. Sean was rushed to the hospital, where his condition rapidly deteriorated. Mary Jane quickly contacted Sean's sister, Jennifer, who flew from Florida to California to be by his side. The doctors diagnosed Sean with a tick-borne illness that can cause severe complications, including brain inflammation, in a matter of days. A long and arduous battle for Sean's life and health ensued. After over a month in a coma and 6 months of rehabilitation, the doctors finally managed to revive Sean. The road to recovery was tough, and the tick bite he'd suffered during their summer walk had turned out to be a serious injury. Jennifer took Sean back to Florida, where he began a long and difficult therapy. Mary Jane was left to wait anxiously, with phone calls being their only means of communication. The Eckhart family came together in the face of a series of troubles and unexpected illnesses. Donna went to great lengths to help her son Sean recover from a serious illness, carefully monitoring his diet and exercise to ensure he made a full recovery. Meanwhile, Stanley harbored feelings of resentment and jealousy towards his brother, which only grew as time passed. After his recovery, Sean regained his strength and resumed his studies in music. In 2009, he completed his studies and began making plans to return to Mary Jane, the girl he loved, and introduce her to his parents. However, his plans were not meant to be. Stanley introduced Sean to his dream girl, Samantha, a native of Florida, who quickly clicked with the two brothers. Samantha was charmed by Sean's cheerful and sociable nature, but Stanley was smitten with her and actively courted her. They went on several romantic dates, culminating in a passionate kiss. Stanley was over the moon, but Samantha had still been thinking about Sean. She sent him a message confessing her feelings and inviting him on a city walk. Sean agreed, and they spent the evening strolling along the waterfront, talking about Stanley and Mary Jane. However, Sean didn't try to win Samantha over, as he had already given his heart to someone else. Samantha, feeling down, sent a message to Stanley revealing that Sean had been seeing her behind his back and confessed his strong feelings for her. That same evening, Stanley was enraged. He stormed into his brother's room and they had a heated conversation. Initially, they spoke in hushed tones, but their words soon turned into loud shouts, followed by an eerie silence. Although their parents were home, they were accustomed to the brothers' loud arguments, so they didn't think much of it. It was Mom who first realized Sean was missing. He hadn't returned her calls. Recalling the argument from the previous evening, she got Stanley's explanation that Sean had left home after their fight. 2 days into the search, the police received a chilling call. The caller was Sean's sister, Jennifer. The dispatcher who took the call only heard a woman's scream and a loud, piercing male moan in the background. After repeated requests to calm down, the dispatcher finally managed to record Jennifer's desperate plea for help. Jennifer continued to scream, begging for assistance and reporting that Stanley had killed Sean. She said Stanley was in the house, talking to their mom, while their dad was in shock over his dead son, who had been buried in the backyard since early Saturday morning. The police officers arriving at the scene of the tragedy were met with a horrifying sight in the backyard of the house. Samuel was on his knees, his hands covered in dirt, as he frantically pulled his son's body out of the ground, screaming and desperately trying to clean the dirt off Sean's body. In an instant, a quiet neighborhood with well-manicured lawns, where the two young brothers would often wave to their neighbors, was transformed into a scene of violent tragedy. The once happy family, who had raised 2 sons, was now left with the traumatic memory of digging in the ground only to find one son's lifeless body and watching the other son being handcuffed and taken away. Stanley Eckard was arrested on suspicion of premeditated murder. During his initial interrogation, he claimed that he had not intended to kill his brother. According to Stanley, he struck Sean on the head in a fit of anger, causing the fatal injury. After realizing Sean was dead, Stanley tied up the body and secretly buried it in the backyard to avoid disturbing his mother. Stanley's statement at the inquest seemed callous and calculating, contrary to his claim of being a loving brother. He said, "I buried him after all, that's what you do with dead people." In his defense, Stanley maintained that he covered up the incident to spare his mother the shock of learning about her son's death. He planned to rebury the body once his parents were no longer around. Stanley's behavior during the interrogation was inconsistent. At times, he broke down in tears, confessed to the crime, and expressed remorse, portraying the incident as an accident. However, he also displayed hatred towards Sean, speaking harshly and bitterly about his brother, whom he blamed for his troubles and for winning their mother's and Samantha's affections. On the same day, Stanley was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, with no chance of bail. 2 days later, Dr. Barbara Wolfe performed an autopsy on Sean's body and presented her findings to the court. Her forensic examination revealed that Sean had bruising on his neck, both under the skin and in the form of rope marks, indicating that his neck had been constricted to make breathing difficult. The autopsy concluded that Sean's death was caused by a head injury and asphyxiation. Assistant State Attorney Pete Mago carefully reviewed the case. The first hearing took place on February 25, 2011, presided over by District Judge Stephen Rushing. Stanley's parents, Donna and Samuel Eckard, sat in the second row, weeping as they watched their oldest son being led into the courtroom in handcuffs. On April 9, 2013, the trial of Stanley Eckard began in Hernando Court, presided over by District Judge Anthony Taddy. The defense team, led by attorney Alan Hunter, faced prosecutor Pete in the prosecution. The prosecution's main objective was to convince the jury that Stanley had carefully planned the crime, whereas the defense argued that the tragedy resulted from a spontaneous fight. In his closing statement, Alan Hunter appealed to the jury to consider Stanley's attempt to cover up the crime, allegedly driven by good intentions. Stanley Eckard was charged with first-degree premeditated murder, which carried a mandatory life sentence if convicted. The verdict would determine his fate, with sentencing scheduled for May 13th. Alternatively, if convicted of second-degree murder, Stanley faced up to life in prison. Throughout the trial, Stanley maintained that he never intended to kill his brother 3 years prior, before burying him in the front yard of their house. Prior to the trial, Eckard had rejected a plea deal from prosecutors, which offered to limit his prison sentence to 20 years in exchange for pleading guilty to second-degree murder. As the clerk read the verdict, Stanley remained stone-faced, his fate now in the hands of District Judge Anthony Taddy, who had presided over the 5-day trial. Samuel and Donna, the parents of the accused, wept quietly as the jury left the courtroom. Samuel's sobs soon turned to screams as numerous relatives gathered around him and his wife, Donna. The jury had found Eckard guilty of second-degree murder, but didn't completely absolve him of guilt, as they believed that he didn't plan to kill 19-year-old Sean. The jury, consisting of 9 women and 3 men, reached this verdict after deliberating for approximately 2.5 hours. The Eckard family maintained that they believed Stanley's account of the events that unfolded in the early morning hours of June 19, 2010. They also criticized the state attorney's office for filing charges against Eckard. Later that day, Samuel Eckard praised Chief Assistant Public Defender Alan Lanter for doing an excellent job. The family, however, questioned the appropriateness of the sentence and subsequently filed an appeal to overturn the verdict, which was denied. Samuel Eckard expressed his surprise at the jury's verdict. stating that he couldn't understand how the jury reached a verdict of second-degree murder in about 2 hours. He added that despite that, their faith was not shaken. One undisputed fact that emerged during the trial was that after his brother's death, Stanley pulled his body out of Sean's bedroom window and buried it in a shallow grave in the backyard of the family's Spring Hill home. It was Samuel Eckert who discovered Sean's body 2 days later. Pete Mago showed the jury photos of Sean's body in a hole, highlighting the gruesome reality. He emphasized Stanley's inconsistent testimony, changing his story 6 times when questioned about his brother's death. Mago revealed Stanley sent fake messages from Sean's phone, pretending he was alive. After hours of questioning, Stanley finally admitted to killing Sean during a struggle, claiming he hid the body to protect their mother. Mago argued Stanley's manual infliction of injuries constitutes murder, citing testimony and statements about escalating tensions with Samantha Rowe. Stanley discussed revenge with his brother and friend, mentioning a method of killing, but this evidence was tenuous. Alan Lanter argued a crime requires intent, denied killing his brother, and cited the pathologist's testimony that Sean's death was likely caused by a combination of factors, including a head injury possibly sustained from a fall. Lanter reminded the jury of Donna Eckert's testimony about Sean's severe mood swings after his illness diagnosis. She also said his death was an accident. Lanter urged jurors to focus on the circumstances leading to Sean's death, not the disturbing photos or Stanley's decision to bury him. Stanley Eckert is not a murderer, Lanter said. The Eero parents were devastated, having lost 2 sons in one day. The brutal murder of an innocent brother is beyond comprehension. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kelly Clayton. Kelly Clayton, also known as Kelly Stage Clayton, resides in Cotton, New York. Kelly Clayton had a promising life ahead of her. In high school, she was an exemplary student, excelling academically and serving as a role model for her peers. Her academic achievements were impressive, and she passed exams with ease. Despite her academic focus, Kelly's appearance was often described as model-like, and she could have pursued a career in modeling if she had chosen to do so. Following high school, Kelly enrolled in a teacher training university to become a chemistry teacher, which brought immense pride to her parents. However, after a few years, Kelly suddenly lost interest in her studies. It is unclear what triggered this change, but she eventually withdrew from the university and informed her parents that she no longer wanted to pursue a teaching career. Kelly felt that she was too young to be confined to a life of grading notebooks and managing classrooms. Instead, she expressed a desire to travel and experience life to the fullest. Her parents were disappointed and upset by her decision, leading to a 6-month estrangement from their daughter. Kelly's life took an unexpected turn when she met Tom Clayton at a party hosted by mutual friends. Tom was immediately smitten with Kelly and began showering her with attention. His athletic physique and attractive appearance made him a standout, which wasn't surprising given his successful hockey career. As a semi-professional player for the Jackal team, Tom was known for his strength and aggression on the ice. However, he realized his hockey career would eventually end due to physical limitations. Tom would have to retire and enjoy the game from the sidelines, either by attending live matches or watching his favorite team on television. They continued with their lives, starting by returning to New York to get married. They then moved to North Carolina and eventually settled in the small town of Cato, which had only a few thousand residents. Tom started a franchise that specialized in rebuilding houses damaged by fires or disasters. He also worked for a friend's company in a related field. Kelly, on the other hand, had dropped out of university and was working as a waitress. Although she changed jobs, she continued to work even after having 2 children. Tom's income was sufficient for the family, and Kelly could have quit her job to care for their daughters, but she chose to continue working to earn extra money. She used this extra income to buy toys and pamper her children. On September 28, 2015, Tom went to play poker with his friends, the Millers, as he usually did. He preferred to attend these gatherings alone, as playing for money required a certain level of skill and experience. Additionally, someone had to stay home with the children, and bringing the whole family would have turned the evening into a noisy and chaotic affair, detracting from the enjoyment of the game. That evening, Tom was on a losing streak, but instead of giving up, he tried to win back his losses. He suggested that anyone who wanted to stay and play until morning was welcome to do so, but no one took him up on the offer, and he ended up going home. At home, a horrific scene unfolded before Tom's eyes. His wife lay in a pool of her own blood, severely beaten and, at first glance, appeared lifeless. Panicked, Tom frantically searched the rooms for his children. Fortunately, they were unharmed but terrified. He quickly scooped up his daughters and rushed to his neighbor Derek's house, desperate to shield them from the gruesome sight of their mother's battered body. From Derek's house, Tom called the police, struggling to process the chaos. The officer who arrived at the scene found Tom kneeling beside his wife's body, attempting to administer CPR. However, the emergency medical technicians soon intervened and pulled Tom away, revealing the devastating truth: Kelly had been deceased for an extended period, and nothing could be done to revive her. The house was in disarray, with blood covering both floors. The bedroom showed signs of an intense struggle between Kelly and her killer, who carried out the brutal act despite the presence of children in the house. It appeared Kelly had been pushed down the stairs, as evidenced by the broken banister, and brutally beaten with a blunt object until the killer was certain she was dead. No signs of knife or gunshot wounds were found. The officer filming the crime scene observed that Tom seemed lost and in shock. He wandered aimlessly, briefly entering the room before exiting, and was unable to provide the officer with basic information, such as the location of the children's room or the emergency exit. However, when asked about his whereabouts during the murder, Tom calmly stated he had spent the evening at a friend's house playing poker. The officer, failing to obtain clear information from Tom, proceeded to question the neighbor and the children. Tom's eldest daughter, Charlie, described the perpetrator as a robber. According to Charlie, she and her sister were drifting off to sleep when they heard their mother scream loudly from the next room. Their mother yelled, "Charlie, run away from here," and then the whole house shook violently. They cautiously left their room and saw the perpetrator leaning over their mother, beating her with what looked like a hammer. They ran back into the nursery, blocked the door with a small nightstand, and hid under the bed. Fortunately, the perpetrator wasn't looking for them, as the nightstand wouldn't have been enough to stop him. When asked to describe the perpetrator, Charlie said he was big, like a bear. He wore blue jeans, a black shirt, and a mask similar to the one her father wears when hunting. Charlie also noted that the perpetrator's eyes looked like her father's, but she didn't remember anything else, as she only caught a brief glimpse before getting scared and running away. Police officers investigating the house couldn't find evidence to support her claim that the perpetrator was a burglar. There were no signs of forced entry at the front or back doors, but the garage gate was open, which could have been an entry point. However, nothing was stolen from the house, including jewelry and cash, and the cabinets were all closed. This was unusual, as burglars typically search every area. Officers quickly suspected that Tom, was involved in the murder. They believed he was pretending to be a grieving husband and had actually killed his wife to collect insurance payments. If Kelly's life was insured, Tom could potentially receive up to $1 million. The police just needed to gather evidence to solve the case, especially since the daughter mentioned that the perpetrator's mask and eyes resembled her father's. However, the police couldn't find the hunting mask in the house. After discovering Tom's whereabouts on the night in question, the police interviewed the other poker players. One of Tom's friends was incredulous. "You think Tom is the killer? That's unbelievable. His wife was just murdered, and instead of finding the real culprit, you're focusing on him. Another friend, less emotional, chimed in, Tom couldn't have done it. He worked 2 jobs non-stop because he loved Kelly and their kids. It's just not possible. Besides, he was with us the entire night, playing poker. Even when everyone else was tired, he wanted to keep playing. Laura, an acquaintance of Tom's, shared her concerns during a break in the game. She recalled that Tom had asked to borrow her phone, claiming he had left his in the car, which was only 10 meters away. Laura found this odd but lent him her phone anyway. Tom stepped outside to make the call, but when Laura checked her phone's call history later, there was no record of the call, suggesting that Tom had deleted it. Laura discussed this incident with her husband, who had been sitting next to Tom at the poker table. He noticed that Tom wasn't paying attention to the game, instead keeping his head down, focusing on something on the table. It turned out that Tom had his phone with him the whole time, which raised more questions. Why did Tom borrow Laura's phone if he had his own? Who was he trying to call, and why couldn't he use his own phone? After Laura's testimony, the police re-questioned Charlie, Tom's daughter, and she reiterated that the robber resembled her father. The next testimony came from the niece of Kelly. She explained that she hadn't told her Aunt Kelly about Tom's true nature because she didn't want to upset Kelly. Aunt Kelly adored Tom. The niece felt her truth wasn't needed, implying that it wouldn't change anything. The niece saw Tom as a person with 2 sides. On the surface, he appeared caring and attentive, often showering Aunt Kelly with attention and gifts, and even helping with childcare, which is more than many fathers do. However, his behavior at work revealed a completely different personality. Recognizing her niece's concerns about being young and alone, Aunt Kelly had set up a job for her with Tom the previous summer. During her employment, the niece handled tasks such as correspondence, registration, and managing documents. At first, her interactions with Tom were strictly professional, mainly because she didn't know him well before working for him. One day, Tom got drunk and came to the office, revealing to the niece that his family life was a facade. He confessed to loving his daughters, but not his wife, Aunt Kelly. He had been unfaithful, having multiple affairs during their marriage, and considered leaving her but stayed due to financial concerns. It was later also confirmed by female participants of a poker game that Tom was indeed unfaithful, having relationships with 2 women present at the game. Additionally, Kelly's 16-year-old niece shared information about Michael Beard, another employee of Tom's firm. Michael was doing repair work on houses after a fire, but there were frequent reports of items going missing from the houses where he worked. Tom initially doubted his customers when they accused Michael Beard of theft during fire restoration jobs. However, as the complaints continued, it became clear that Michael was indeed stealing from clients. Additionally, there were allegations of Michael showing up to work intoxicated. When Tom finally confronted Michael about his behavior, he was understandably upset and disappointed. Despite having every right to be angry, Tom took a surprisingly compassionate approach. Instead of simply firing Michael and cutting ties, Tom actively reached out to other companies and recommended Michael for a job. When none of those opportunities panned out, Tom took it a step further and offered Michael work around his own house, doing odd jobs like cutting the grass, watering plants, and making minor repairs. This decision showed that Tom was willing to give Michael a second chance, even if it meant finding alternative employment for his former employee. The detective brought Michael Beard in for questioning. Michael claimed he only stole because he and his family were in dire need of money. He expressed his gratitude towards Tom, his former employer, who had always defended him. Michael also praised Tom's wife, who had shown kindness by feeding him and giving his children old clothes. However, the investigation took a turn when Michael's wife, Holly, was interrogated. She revealed that Tom had offered Michael a job, which Michael had not mentioned earlier, and promised to pay him $10,000 for it. This new information raised suspicions about Michael's alibi. He was called back to the station and hooked up to a lie detector. The test results indicated that Michael was lying, and he eventually cracked under pressure and began to confess. The investigation was sparked by the death of Kelly, which had shaken Michael. He had even attended church to pray for her soul, showing that he was genuinely distraught by her passing. Despite initial doubts about his involvement, the police had released him after the first round of questioning. However, Holly's testimony changed everything. Tom promised Michael $10,000 to kill his wife, Kelly, and make it look like an accident. The plan was for Michael to sneak into the house while Tom was playing poker, strangle Kelly, and then start a fire to cover up the crime. The house was insured for a large sum of money. Michael found 2 cans of gasoline waiting for him in the garage, which he would use to set the fire. He quietly entered the house while everyone was asleep. He crept upstairs to Kelly's bedroom, but she was either awake or woken by the sound of the door. She saw Michael and began screaming. Kelly's screaming startled Michael, and he tried to strangle her. However, Kelly was stronger than she appeared and fought back. A fierce struggle ensued, moving from the bedroom to the kitchen. Michael was surprised by Kelly's strength, which made the fight much more intense than he had anticipated. Michael was in a state of shock and panic, flailing his arms wildly and grabbing at Kelly's clothes, unable to focus on the fight. In contrast, Kelly was fighting for her life, accurately aiming her blows at Michael's face. If the police had arrived at Michael's location sooner, they would have seen evidence of the beating he had taken. After a prolonged struggle, Michael slammed Kelly's head into the wall with great force, knocking her to the ground. She was unable to get up for some time. Michael then produced a hammer and continued to strike Kelly's head until she showed no signs of life. Consumed by rage and panic, Michael fled the house, forgetting that Tom had instructed him not only to kill Kelly but also to set fire to the house to conceal the crime. Mark Blandford, Michael's accomplice, was just the driver. Knowing Michael from working together and staying with him, Mark had not been surprised when Michael, known for petty theft, had asked him to drive during a break-in. Mark had mentioned that he had initially wanted to decline Michael's request, but that the offer of $500 had been tempting. After some deliberation, Michael had convinced him to participate. Michael's plan had been to rob a businessman, and he had needed Mark's assistance to make a quick getaway before the police arrived. Michael had also promised to help with the car. Mark had eventually agreed, but only on the condition that he could park the car at a safe distance from the house. Michael had accepted this condition. That evening, Mark had waited for Michael in the car in a dark alley, and Michael had come back quickly enough, breathing heavily and telling him to move as fast as possible. Michael hadn't had any bag or sack on him, which hadn't looked much like a robbery. Mark hadn't asked him any questions along the way, simply because he hadn't wanted to know anything. He had just wanted his $500, which he hadn't ended up getting. On the way out, Michael had asked Mark to stop at a bridge over a creek a couple blocks south of there. Mark had stopped there, and Michael had hastily stripped off his outer garments and thrown them off the bridge. Mark had offered to show the place if needed. Indeed, police officers who had arrived on the scene at Mark's behest had found parts of Michael's outer clothing near the creek, as well as the hammer used to kill Kelly. Michael, already in custody on suspicion of first-degree murder, began to change his testimony. According to him, he was indeed hired by Tom, indeed for $10,000, but only to commit arson at the house and nothing more. Michael spent a very long time assuring the police of his innocence, and all because he did not know that Mark had shown the place where Michael had thrown out his things, and that his clothes, as well as the murder weapon, had already been submitted for examination. And the experts found both on his clothes and on the hammer the blood of Kelly Clayton. And that was the most direct proof that it was him who killed Kelly, not someone else. Tom denied ordering the massacre of his wife, claiming Michael acted alone. According to Tom, Michael knew Tom had money and was motivated by resentment over losing his job. Tom suggested Michael robbed his house, unaware Kelly was home, resulting in her death. However, Laura, a woman who played poker with Tom, revealed that Tom used her cell phone to make a call. The detective obtained the call records, confirming suspicions. The records showed Tom called Michael on the night of September 28th to 29th. Michael was tried first and maintained he was hired to set fire to the house for insurance purposes. He claimed he didn't kill Kelly and the blood on his clothes came from touching her dead body. He had disposed of his belongings to avoid suspicion of being at the Claytons' house that night. His testimony seemed convincing. The jury deliberated for 7 hours before delivering a guilty verdict on all counts against Michael Beard, who now faced life imprisonment. In contrast, Tom's lawyers managed to gather records of conversations and correspondence between Tom and Michael, but none of these clearly mentioned their nefarious plan. Furthermore, the prosecution's attempts to obtain billing transcripts of Tom's movements yielded no concrete evidence. All the evidence against Tom was circumstantial. However, one key detail caught the attention of investigators. The car in which Mark had given Michael a ride was registered to Tom's company. Moreover, on the day of the incident, Tom had arrived at the office in his personal Toyota but then switched to the company's pickup truck, which was later driven to Michael's house and left there. The truck was returned to the office the day after the tragedy. This suggested that Tom had, in fact, provided Michael with the car that he and Mark used to commit the crime. It was a crucial piece of evidence that the jury testified to during the trial. The 6-day trial concluded with the jury finding Tom guilty of hiring Michael to commit the heinous crime. Michael subsequently appealed, using the testimony of young Charlie, who claimed that the eyes behind the mask belonged to her father. However, the court dismissed the appeal due to the matching description of the clothing found under the bridge. Consequently, Tom Clayton and Michael Beard were sentenced to life in prison. Mark received a 4-year prison sentence for manslaughter. The custody of Tom and Kelly's children was awarded to Kelly's sister, Kim. With time, Charlie has learned to cope with the tragedy. Although she occasionally remembers her mother, she refuses to discuss her father, whom she will never want to see again. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Jesse Bardwell. Jesse Bardwell was born on September 10, 1988, in Pascagoula, Mississippi, to loving parents Gary and Carla Bardwell. She had an older brother named Brandon. The siblings had a close relationship, with Brandon often protecting Jesse from bullies. Their childhood was filled with joy and love, thanks in part to frequent visits from their grandma Kitty, who adored her grandchildren. She would read to them, share stories, and invent games, creating a warm and nurturing environment. The Bardwell family embodied the quintessential American family spirit. Jessie was a kind, cheerful, and stylish girl who dreamed of a career in the beauty industry and one day opening her own salon. However, when Jessie was 14, her parents divorced, disrupting the family's harmony. She chose to live with her father, Gary, with whom she had a warm and trusting relationship. As a firefighter, Gary's job could be unpredictable, and Jessie would often call to check on him. Gary eventually married again, this time to Gina. Jessie developed a good relationship with her new stepmother. Gina proved to be an excellent homemaker, providing care and support to the entire family. Jessie was relieved to see her father happy with his partner, which made her feel secure about leaving home in the future. After completing her education, Jessie moved to Orange Beach, Alabama, to start her independent life. She worked as a waitress at Cobalt, a popular beachfront restaurant, to support herself. Her father, Gary, recalled how Jessie loved being near the water as it brought her peace. Despite the distance, they remained close, frequently exchanging messages and spending quality time together, such as going boating and fishing, whenever he visited. Kimberly Embry, the restaurant manager and Jesse's friend, discovered that Jesse's father was a skilled musician. After retiring, he dedicated more time to his craft, leading to frequent performances at the restaurant, where he even had his own table. Kimberly admired the close bond between Jesse and her father, describing them as true friends. Jessie always attended her father's performances, and the tips she earned helped fund her college education and pursue her dreams. At work, Jessie met a young man named Terry Ellis, who was also a waiter. They began dating and developed a steady and serious relationship, appearing to be a harmonious couple. However, at a social event, Jessie met Jason Lowe, a friend of Terry's, and was immediately smitten. Her sudden infatuation surprised everyone, and she fell deeply in love with Jason, becoming oblivious to her surroundings. Jessie and Terry parted ways amicably. Jessie opened up to him about her newfound feelings. This decision turned her life upside down, but she was drawn to Jason's charming and promising nature. He was handsome, held 2 degrees, and had a decent job. Jason was polite and knew how to present himself well. For Jessie, her new feelings marked the beginning of a new life. When Jason learned about her dreams, he promised to fulfill them. As he needed to relocate to Dallas, Texas, for a high-paying job in the technology industry, Jessie decided to follow him. Jessie viewed the move as an adventure, rather than a life-changing decision. Although she was hesitant to leave her father, Gary, for an extended period, her ambition and youthful idealism ultimately prevailed. She kept her plans a secret from her father, fearing his disappointment and knowing he would be opposed to her decision. As a result, she didn't inform him of her plans, even when they spent their last Christmas together. Mr. Bardwell didn't notice anything out of the ordinary about his daughter Jessie's behavior initially. She seemed happy, laughing and joking as usual. Jessie, 24, had moved to Richardson, a suburb of Dallas, with her boyfriend Jason. While Jason worked from home, Jessie was looking for a new job and scouting locations for her own salon. They had plans to get married and buy a house. However, Jessie's relationship with her father began to change drastically. They grew apart, and Jessie stopped answering her father's calls, which troubled Mr. Bardwell. It wasn't until speaking with Kimberly that Mr. Bardwell learned of Jessie's new boyfriend and her move out of state. He tried to reconnect with Jessie, but Jason controlled her communications. Mr. Bardwell's suspicions about Jason grew after meeting him when they visited Pascagoula. The father attempted to dissuade his daughter, Jessie, from returning to Texas, but she was resolute. When Gary inquired about her well-being, Jessie hugged him tightly, insisting everything was fine and expressing her desire to make her family proud. However, her father couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. He even wrote a song, "Taken," in her honor. For months after Jessie moved to Texas, she ceased responding to phone calls. The final warning sign came on May 8, when she failed to wish her mother and stepmother a happy Mother's Day, a cherished family tradition. Gary sensed something was terribly wrong and contacted Jason, Jessie's boyfriend. Jason claimed ignorance of Jessie's whereabouts, citing their supposedly open relationship, which allowed her to come and go as she pleased. However, Gary knew this was a lie, aware that Jason was a jealous and controlling partner who contradicted himself. The next morning, Jessie's father headed to Texas, convinced that her boyfriend was involved in her disappearance. During his journey, he sent the boyfriend a message warning him that if Jessie wasn't home when he arrived, there would be serious consequences. When he arrived at their apartment, he found no sign of Jessie or her belongings. Despite this, the boyfriend claimed he had no idea where she was and was waiting for her to return. Later, Kimberly shared some information that Jessie had confided in her during a rare heart-to-heart conversation. It turned out that Jason had been spending money on banned substances and entertainment, and his promises to fulfill Jessie's dreams had largely evaporated. The boyfriend had been pretending to be someone he wasn't, and this was also reflected in how he treated Jesse. While their relationship appeared fine in public, Jason was often rude and aggressive in private, leading to frequent conflicts. With Jesse missing, her father filed a missing person report with the Richardson police. The investigation was led by Detective Hiram Hale, a father of 3 daughters who was determined to uncover the truth. The police took immediate action, speaking with the boyfriend several times and searching the house, but they found no sign of Jesse. During the conversation, the young man, Jason, mentioned that he last saw Jesse on May 8 around 10 a.m. She left without explanation, and he thought she might be visiting her parents. He claimed that she drove away in her Acura car. Jason maintained that their relationship was casual and that he didn't control her or pry into her personal life. However, investigators discovered information that contradicted his statements. They found out that Jesse had sold her Acura car 3 weeks earlier, and Jason was present at the sale. This new information raised suspicions, and investigators questioned Jason again on May 12. When searching his home, police found a plate with a powder substance in the kitchen, which turned out to be cocaine. The investigation then shifted to Jason's garage and the vehicle inside. At first, Jason was unwilling to permit the search, stating that he shared the garage with others and therefore required their consent. However, he eventually dropped his objections. Upon entering the garage, officers noticed a mud-splattered Audi with a detached bumper. They suspected that Jesse's body might be inside the car. Although the vehicle was empty, the smell of decomposition was stronger inside. Police found the broken bumper and what appeared to be blood stains in the trunk. When experts applied a luminol-based substance to the cargo area, it illuminated with a blue light, indicating the presence of blood, likely belonging to the missing woman. Jason claimed he became stuck in the mud while searching for his girlfriend after the car's bumper caught on a bush. Despite this, he maintained that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. However, he was unable to explain the presence of blood in the car or the controlled substances found in his home. Experts determined that the amount of blood in the trunk suggested that she was likely deceased. As a result, the case was reclassified as a homicide investigation. To prevent the main suspect from fleeing, Jason was detained on charges related to the narcotics found in his home. During interrogation, Jason continued to stick to his story. When shown a photo of his loved one, he refused to provide any explanations, gazing at the picture without emotion and suggesting that he was being framed for a crime he did not commit. Eventually, the suspect was charged with homicide, even though Jesse's body had not been found. The search for her continued, but it was a difficult and time-consuming process in the vast state of Texas, with its many rivers, lakes, fields, and forests, where a body could easily be hidden. 1 year later, Jason was in a Texas jail, still cooperating with the investigation. He revealed 2 key details about the case. Firstly, he claimed Jesse's death was an accident and planned to reveal more in court, hoping the jury would be understanding. This makes it difficult for prosecutors to build a case. Andy Farkas, Jason's defense attorney, is very happy about this. Farkas conducted a mock trial with a panel of outsiders acting as jurors, using the available evidence and Jason's confession. However, the mock trial ended in a not guilty verdict, with 15 out of the mock jurors voting to acquit. Farkas hoped that a real court would also deliver a not guilty verdict if they knew the truth. It was later revealed that Jason himself had provided the anonymous tip about the location of the victim's body, which became another piece of evidence in the investigation. The prosecution proposed a deal to reduce the sentence by half if Jason revealed Jesse's location. After discussing it with his lawyer, Jason agreed, on the condition that the source of the information would remain secret until the trial. The authorities wanted to find Jesse's body so her family could give her a proper burial and say their goodbyes. As time passed, Jesse's father, Gary, became consumed by grief and anger, longing for justice to be served. On May 19th, when Jessie's body was finally discovered, her loved ones were able to mourn her and say goodbye. However, when Gary received the autopsy report, he was shocked and appalled by the state of his daughter's body. She had been wrapped in a sheet and was barely recognizable as a human being, having been discarded like trash. Gary arranged for his daughter's body to be returned to her hometown with the help of his friends and former colleagues, who hired a funeral hearse to transport her. Jessie's family, friends, and acquaintances held a memorial service for her on the beach, where they prayed for her to be found and for justice for her suffering. About 1,000 people attended a memorial service at the First United Methodist Church to honor the victim. The victim's grandmother, Kitty Bardwell, spoke emotionally, saying that if the town could be cleansed by the tears shed for her granddaughter, it would be truly clean. The tragedy drew widespread attention, with many offering condolences to the family and coming forward to support them. Gary found a unique way to cope with his emotions. Gary printed a photo of Jason, attached it to a stump, and hit it with a 12-pound sledgehammer. This unusual form of therapy brought him some small sense of relief. However, Gary continued to struggle, often finding it hard to get out of bed in the morning. He held on to the hope that Jason would be tried and convicted for murdering his daughter. Gary blamed himself for not doing more to protect Jessie, wishing he had convinced her to leave Jason or at least break up with him. Gary remembered a phone call from Jessie, where she admitted he was right about Jason after they had argued and he had kicked her out. She had found temporary shelter with a friend but returned to Jason the next day, giving him another chance. Gary had no choice but to accept his daughter's decision, a choice that would later fill him with regret. When the trial finally began, Gary traveled to Texas, determined to see Jason punished for his crime. Prosecutor Cynthia Walker started her opening statement by describing Jason's personality. Many people saw him as complex and difficult to get along with, and he had few friends because of his long history of substance abuse, which often led to uncontrollable outbursts of anger. It's possible that Jessie was a victim of one of these outbursts. Prosecutor Westwin called some of Jason's former girlfriends to testify. They supported the prosecution's claims about Jason's aggressive behavior, saying they had feared for their lives because of his violent jealousy. Like Jessie, they had been isolated from their friends and family by Jason, who showed clear signs of being manipulative and a pathological liar. In contrast, Jason presented himself as superior to other men, successfully deceiving people. Jason responded quickly to these revelations in court. He said he had started using substances at age 13, influenced by his friends, and had become addicted. Jason Lowe tried to keep his life on track, earning multiple degrees and working for a prestigious global company. He claimed his actions were motivated by a desire to fulfill Jessie's dreams and build a life together out of love. However, the prosecution presented a different image of Jason. They suggested that his behavior was inconsistent with someone grieving the loss of a loved one. The investigation found that Jessie's death occurred between May 1st and May 3rd, likely on the day of a reported argument with Jason that the neighbors, the Jordans, witnessed. After Jessie's death, Jason moved her body to the garage and placed it in the trunk of his car, where it remained for several days. The blood found in the car was confirmed to be Jessie's. Jason later moved her body to a remote farm, hiding it in the nearby woods. The sheet wrapping Jessie's body was identified as part of Jason's bedding set, which was still in use at his home even after her death. Meanwhile, Jason continued to see other women, exchanging messages and intimate photos with them before meeting at his apartment. Jason tried to cope with his emotions by using substances, which he believed made dealing with reality easier. However, his attempt to distract himself was disrupted when detectives discovered his involvement in Jessie's death through a clever tactic. They asked Tommy Jordan, someone Jason knew, to talk to him while being monitored. During this conversation, Jason admitted to making a mistake and feeling guilty about an accident that happened with Jesse, which he attributed to his own negligence. Jason's admission was seen as a confession, and he eventually told the prosecution where Jesse's body was located. At the trial, Jason shared his account of what happened on the night of Jesse's death. He explained that they had taken pills that increased their libido and were intimate in the shower. Jason slipped and fell, followed by Jessie, who hit her head on the bathtub. She then sat down, feeling hot and dizzy, and Jason claimed he offered to call for medical help, but Jessie refused, thinking that rest and sleep would be enough. Jason found Jessie unresponsive and not breathing on his chest the next morning. Despite trying to revive her, she was dead. Afraid of being accused of murder, Jason didn't call the police and instead decided to handle the situation himself. He initially left Jessie's body in his car, but later moved it to a remote farm where he carelessly discarded her in a trash pile without a proper burial. However, Jason's story was questionable due to his questionable character and the results of the forensic medical examination. The examination revealed that Jessie had suffered severe head injuries that couldn't have been caused by slaps to the face, suggesting that Jason had tried to cover up evidence of a violent beating. As a result, Jason's entire story was discredited. After deliberating for 6 hours, the jury found him guilty. Judge Scott Becker sentenced Jason to 50 years in prison. Jason's original sentence could have been up to 99 years, but it was reduced due to a deal with the prosecution. As a result, Jason won't be eligible for parole until at least 2041. Gary felt a sense of relief when the verdict was announced, feeling that justice had been served. However, he noticed that Jason showed no remorse for his actions. Interestingly, Jason's ex-girlfriends, including Chrissy Chambers, were present at the trial, with Chambers commenting that if she could give one piece of advice to others in similar situations, it would be to get away as soon as possible. Jason continues to claim that the death was an accident and maintains his innocence to this day. Sadly, Jason's girlfriend, Jessie, had already paid the ultimate price. Jessie grew up with a positive example of male behavior, courtesy of her father Gary, but tragically discovered Jason's darker side too late. This experience serves as a warning that some men can be deceiving, manipulative, hiding behind a charming exterior. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Abril Perez. Abril Perez was born on November 18, 1971, in Monterrey, northeastern Mexico, to parents Maria del Seguro Sagan and Manuel Perez. She was the second of 3 children. Abril demonstrated exceptional mathematical and entrepreneurial abilities from a young age. She was a dedicated reader and consistently ranked as the top student in her class. As a teenager, Abril prioritized achieving financial independence, showcasing remarkable discipline and effective time management skills. Following high school, Abril attended the most prestigious university in New Leon, where she obtained a master's degree in finance and business administration. Her peers described her as intelligent, focused, and ambitious, while also being kind, cheerful, and always willing to assist others. After graduating, Abril secured a position in the sales department of one of the country's largest and fastest-growing companies. She later transitioned into digital sales, a rapidly expanding field, and discovered her true passion. Abril quickly rose through the ranks and became the executive director of the company within 2 years. Abril was a young, beautiful, and successful woman who was rapidly achieving her life goals. She had built a stellar career, supported her family, and had big plans for the future. However, her personal life was still unfulfilled, which worried her loved ones. Despite this, Abril was confident that she would find true love and live a long, happy life. But she had no idea how her future marriage to the seemingly perfect man would turn out. That man was one Carlos Garcia Sanchez, whom she met in the mid-1990s when her career was taking off. Juan Carlos was just 3 years older than Abril and shared her ambitious drive, which drew her to him. He, in turn, was captivated by her stunning looks, charming personality, kind heart, bright smile, sharp intellect, and remarkable determination. Juan Carlos graduated from a prestigious science and technology university, where he excelled in economics and trade. He then continued his studies at Harvard University in the United States. After returning to Mexico, he built a successful career in the emerging field of e-commerce. Juan Carlos and Abril met at a conference on the latest financial technologies. Their companies collaborated on several projects, allowing them to cross paths multiple times. Eventually, Juan Carlos realized he had developed feelings for Abril, who was intelligent and beautiful. He obtained her phone number through mutual acquaintances and asked her out on a date. Abril was also attracted to Juan Carlos, finding him to be educated, elegant, and engaging in conversation on a wide range of topics. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and by 1998, they decided to get married. At that point, they had both achieved significant success in their careers and were working on developing online stores, a field with great potential. Their life seemed like a fairy tale, inspiring envy and admiration from those around them. However, surface of their perfect family, there were some dark secrets. It wasn't until 2001, 3 years after their wedding, that they had their first child, a daughter named Ana Cecilia. The arrival of their child marked a new chapter in their lives. Her husband appeared happy, showing their newborn daughter love and admiration. 2 years later, Abril gave birth to a son, named Juan Carlos Jr., after his father. 2 more years passed, and the family had another child, a boy named Julio Andres. Despite having 3 young children, Abril hardly took any time off work and managed to balance parenting with career advancement. She made homemade meals, helped with schoolwork, took the children to sports activities, and aimed to be both a perfect mother and their best friend. Outwardly, the Perez-Sanchez family seemed perfect, wealthy, successful, with 3 lovely children, and everything they could want. However, their home life remained a secret, even from their closest relatives, for a long time. In the early years of their relationship, Juan Carlos revealed his true personality to Abril. He had a short temper, was aggressive, and had a tendency to be overly harsh, refusing to compromise and insisting that everything be done his way. Initially, Abril was in love and believed that as time passed, Juan Carlos's rough edges would smooth out. Their shared projects brought them together, and their collaboration led to significant accomplishments, including financial success. However, as the years went by, Juan Carlos's irritability grew, and verbal arguments escalated into physical confrontations. Following the birth of their first daughter, he made a brief effort to control his emotions, but this change was short-lived. A similar attempt was made after the birth of their eldest son, but by the time their 3rd child arrived, Juan Carlos no longer made any effort to be a good father or husband. Juan Carlos frequently directed his anger and frustration at Abril and disregarding her emotional well-being. He would insult and belittle her, the mother of his children, and seemed to feel better when she cried. He regularly physically harmed her, doing so in a way that left no visible marks, allowing her to hide the bruises with clothing or makeup. His goal was to maintain his reputation as a model family man, loving husband, and father. Abril kept quiet about the abuse for years, not even telling her sister and mother about the ongoing situation. She earned a good income and could have raised the children on her own, providing them with a good education and stable upbringing. However, her husband was wealthy and influential, and she knew he could use the courts to take the children away from her. Knowing Juan Carlos's true nature, Abril couldn't bear the thought of her children being left alone with him, as she considered him a monster capable of anything. When the family situation reached a boiling point, what was once considered an ideal household now raised suspicions that something was terribly wrong. Abril was not just subdued, but deeply distressed and visibly struggling. She had lost weight, slept poorly, and frequently had bruises on her face and body that were becoming harder to hide and explain. Despite this, Juan Carlos appeared calm and confident in public, pretending that everything was fine. He played the role of a loving and caring husband, interacting with Abril politely and affectionately. However, at home, he transformed into a menacing figure. Despite loved ones urging Abril to divorce him, she insisted that everything was fine and that she could handle the problems with her husband on her own. 2014 marked the peak of Juan Carlos' career when he became the head of a major trading company, making him one of the most influential people in his field. Following this promotion, his family relocated to Mexico City, settling into a large house in one of the capital's upscale neighborhoods. Their children began attending an elite private school. Abril had genuinely hoped that this change of environment would improve their relationship. However, contrary to her expectations, the abuse continued. Juan Carlos often persisted in physically and verbally abusing his wife in front of their children. He increasingly accused her of infidelity without any basis for his claims. Whenever she tried to defend herself, he would resort to physical violence, insisting he would find evidence of her supposed disloyalty. Juan Carlos monitored her phone and emails, forbade her from using social media, and when finding no evidence, he hired a private detective to follow her and photograph any men who came near her. For 4 years, she tried every possible way to save her marriage. Despite her efforts, her husband's behavior became increasingly unbearable, creating a never-ending nightmare for her. To outsiders, however, their union appeared happy and successful, even enviable, due to her husband's wealth, influence, and seemingly caring nature. In 2018, the Juan Carlos and Abril visited to the Abril's family. During this trip, Juan Carlos treated his wife poorly in front of her parents, who were deeply disturbed by what they saw. This incident marked a turning point for Abril, and she realized that she could no longer continue living this way. She informed her husband that she would file for divorce as soon as they returned to Mexico City. Hearing this, Juan Carlos became enraged, grabbed her throat, and squeezed it so tightly that she nearly lost consciousness. Fortunately, her mother, Maria del Soro, entered the room and raised the alarm, preventing a tragedy. When the family returned to their home in the capital, Abril prepared for divorce and moved from the marital bedroom to a small guest room. However, this did not keep her safe from her husband's abuse. On January 4th, while Abril was still asleep, her husband entered the room holding a baseball bat. He struck her hard on the head and was about to swing again. Half awake, Abril barely understood what was happening, but she managed to roll off the bed just in time, saving her own life. She began to scream, and the children ran into the room, having heard the noise. The youngest son shielded his mother with his body, while the eldest son took the bat away from his father. Together, they fled the house and headed to the hospital, as Abril needed medical attention. Doctors diagnosed Abril with a severe concussion and a deep laceration above her eyebrow that required stitches. After Abril and their sons left the house, Juan Carlos contacted his lawyer to discuss the situation and asked for help in resolving the marital conflict. However, Juan Carlos also posted on social media, accusing his wife of betraying him by being unfaithful and planning to leave him for another man, taking their children and attempting to claim all their jointly acquired assets. Additionally, Juan Carlos claimed that Abril had stolen all the money from their home safe and had injured him with a knife when he tried to stop her. He posted photos of a bloodied knife and brown stains on the floor as evidence. However, the blood on the floor actually belonged to Abril from her own injury, and the knife photo was taken from the internet. Despite the fabrication, Juan Carlos's friends believed his story and actively shared and reposted his account on their social media pages, calling for widespread attention to this supposedly egregious case. Juan Carlos's attempt to kill Abril prompted her to take swift action. From her hospital bed, she filed a police report against him, accusing him of trying to take her life. After her release from the hospital, Abril packed up her 2 young sons and left the family home. Her oldest child, who was attending college in a nearby city, also condemned his father's violent actions. While waiting for justice, she started providing online support and consultations to women who were going through similar experiences. She also planned to open a center that would offer psychological and legal help to victims of domestic violence who had been failed by the justice system. It wasn't until 8.5 months after the incident, in September 2019, that Juan Carlos was finally arrested and charged with inflicting bodily harm and attempting to kill his wife. He was put in jail, where he spent over a month, but he managed to appeal the decision to keep him in detention before his trial. As a result, he was released from jail by November of that year. Judge Federo presided over the case, reclassifying it and ordering a new trial. During the trial, Abril's medical records and photos were not presented as evidence. Her and her son's testimonies were deemed insufficient to detain Juan Carlos because he claimed Abril was manipulating their children against him. The judge released Juan Carlos, concluding his actions didn't pose a direct threat to Abril's life. Abril was shocked and terrified when Juan Carlos was released. She suspected he had bribed his way to freedom, putting her and their children in danger. She wrote to the judge, expressing her fear, but it had no immediate effect. Juan Carlos then initiated a custody battle, forcing Abril to return to Mexico City with their sons to attend court hearings. Abril arrived in Mexico City on November 25 with her children. She had a legitimate fear of her longtime partner and wanted to avoid him. To minimize the risk of an encounter, she planned to leave the city immediately after a court hearing that day. In fact, she had already bought the plane ticket, but Juan Carlos already knew that. After the court session, Abril, her sons, and their lawyer got into a car headed to the airport. However, they never made it to their destination. At a traffic light, a motorcyclist suddenly pulled up next to their car, drew a handgun, and fired 2 shots at Abril, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. The attacker then quickly fled the scene. A shooting occurred, and one of the bullets grazed the younger son, who was sitting in the back seat. Fortunately, none of the children were seriously injured. However, the injured Abril was rushed to the nearest hospital where doctors fought to save her life for more than 6 hours. Unfortunately, due to severe injuries and significant blood loss, they were unable to save her. Abril passed away that evening. The victim's family, including her parents, brother, and sister, immediately flew to the capital and urged authorities to arrest Juan Carlos, whom they believed was behind the brutal act. However, law enforcement had a different perspective, stating that without identifying the shooter, it was difficult to determine the motive behind the attack. They also noted that they could not confirm with certainty that the shooting was ordered by Juan Carlos. The tragic case of murder sparked widespread outrage and public debate. Abril's family successfully drew attention to the case, highlighting numerous instances where men had attempted to kill women but escaped punishment. In response to the public outcry, the Mexican General Prosecutor's Office launched a new investigation into the suspect, Juan Carlos Sanchez, and also examined the actions of the judges who had previously released him. The judges who had released Juan Carlos could face consequences for their role in the Abril death if his guilt was proven. Juan Carlos took to social media to demand justice for his former wife's murder. However, his daughter, Ana Cecilia, accused him of cruelty and shared photos of her mother's hospitalization after Juan Carlos had attacked her with a bat, contradicting her father's claims that he would never harm her mother. Despite the media attention surrounding the case, he was initially allowed to remain free during the investigation. However, he was required to check in with the police weekly and was placed under a restraining order. When he failed to appear at the scheduled time, a warrant was issued for his arrest for violating the order. As expected, Juan Carlos could not be found, and it was later discovered that he had used his wealth and connections to quickly leave the country and enter the United States. Mexican authorities contacted Interpol, reporting Juan Carlos as a fugitive accused of a serious crime, and he was subsequently declared wanted worldwide. Meanwhile, efforts were underway to locate criminals in Abril's assassination. Surveillance footage from street cameras revealed that the motorcyclist who committed the crime was not alone. Two vehicles were seen following the car carrying Abril. The motorcyclist appeared to be in constant communication with the occupants of these vehicles, receiving directions and instructions. After several months of investigation, some of the participants were identified, and on March 5, 2020, 2 suspects were arrested in connection with the case. To everyone's surprise, the suspects did not resist arrest and quickly began cooperating with authorities, hoping to receive lighter sentences. It was confirmed that Juan Carlos was the mastermind behind the crime, and he had paid a significant amount of money to individuals who were directly involved in the crime. The first to be caught were the driver of one of the getaway cars and the motorcyclist who fired the fatal shots. It was discovered that while Juan Carlos was in prison, he had hired 2 experienced criminals to act as his personal bodyguards. One of these bodyguards was released from prison a week before Juan Carlos, and the other was released several days after him. After being released from prison, Juan Carlos reconnected with his accomplices and asked them to recruit trustworthy individuals to help carry out the murder of a person in exchange for a large sum of money. Once all participants were in place, Juan Carlos provided detailed instructions about the intended victim's travel schedule and mode of transportation. However, luring his former wife to Mexico City proved to be a challenge. Juan Carlos used coercion, threatening to take their children unless she attended a court appearance. Despite attending the court date, his ex-wife intended to return to Monterrey on the same day, which Juan Carlos knew about through his sources. 3 more individuals involved in the conspiracy were arrested in late October 2020. Initially, they were taken into custody on suspicion of distributing controlled substances, but further investigation at the police station revealed their potential connection to the high-profile crime. The arrested individuals were part of a major drug trafficking gang led by Balto, who had previously served time with Juan Carlos and offered him protection. In exchange for a significant reward, Balto agreed to help Juan Carlos eliminate his ex-wife. A few weeks later, in November 2020, Maldonado, an individual involved in the case, was also arrested. During his testimony, he confirmed that Juan Carlos had sought out reliable individuals to kill his ex-wife and that he had agreed to assist in exchange for a substantial reward. The investigation confirmed that Juan Carlos was the mastermind behind the crime. His earlier attack on Abril with a stick was reclassified as an attempted murder. As a result, the court issued an arrest warrant for Juan Carlos on charges of femicide. However, his location remained unknown. By spring 2021, the remaining suspects involved in the murder of Abril were apprehended. One of them was already serving time for a separate crime. The searches also led to the discovery of the gun used to kill Abril. In total, 9 individuals linked to the same criminal organization were detained, with 7 of them directly involved in the pursuit and shooting of Abril. More than 4 years after the Abril murder, the mastermind behind the crime, Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez, is still on the run and his location is unknown. Meanwhile, the man who fired the fatal shot has been convicted and sentenced to 52 years in prison. 2 accomplices who participated in the car chase and coordinated with the shooter have each been sentenced to 50 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ilana Frick. Ilana Christina Frick was born in September 1977 in Windsor, Ontario, to George and Anna, who had immigrated to Canada from Croatia in the early 1970s. She was the younger of 2 daughters, with an older sister named Caroline, with whom she was extremely close. Ilana's birth was considered a miracle by her parents. Her mother, Anna, had faced serious health complications after her first pregnancy, and doctors had told them that Anna would likely never conceive again. Anna and George made a significant effort to ensure their daughter's well-being and meet their needs, in spite of the difficulties they faced. They both worked at a car factory, striving to give Alana and Caroline a good education and a comfortable life. Growing up, Alana was a diligent and passionate student. She spent most of her free time reading, also found time to attend dance classes, practice gymnastics, and compete in track and field events. During her summer breaks, Alana chose to work to help support her family, often working in cornfields and learning to manage her finances wisely. As she progressed through school, Alana excelled in math and science, and by the time she reached high school, she had set her sights on a career in medicine. Alana graduated at the top of her high school class and was accepted into a prestigious medical university. Around the same time, she started dating Matthew Ryan, a classmate from high school who was also studying in the same department. They maintained a long-distance relationship after graduation, with Alana moving to Ottawa to pursue a residency program at the university. Matthew, on the other hand, chose to work at a local hospital and did not pursue further education. Despite the distance, Alana and Matthew's relationship continued until nearly 2002. They had even made plans to get married, but ultimately decided to remain friends. By then, Alana was interning at a top clinic and was working towards earning a doctorate, while Matthew's career had not advanced. In February 2003, during a night shift at the hospital, Alana met Mohammed Shamji, a new colleague. She was immediately drawn to him. Mohammed, who was just a year older than Alana, was a resident in the neurosurgery department and came from a family of prominent doctors. Mohammed Shamji was born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario, into a family of medical professionals. His father, Farid Shamji, was a well-known surgeon, and his mother, Edith, was a talented psychiatrist. Mohammed's older brother, Ali, also pursued a career in medicine, becoming a medical biophysicist. Both brothers attended Yale University, and later, Mohammed returned to Canada to earn his doctoral degree from the University of Western Ontario. Additionally, Mohammed had taken an interest in a blonde woman, but at first, he did not make any attempts to approach her. Alana was immediately drawn to Mohammed, a tall, dark-skinned man, and sought to capture his attention. He eventually asked for her number and initiated contact, marking the beginning of their romance. Initially, Alana perceived Mohammed as a reserved individual who hesitated on dates, jumped between topics, or fell silent, giving the impression of being introverted. However, it was later discovered that his behavior was not due to shyness but rather a lack of interest. Unbeknownst to Alana, Mohammed was seeing another woman at the time and intentionally kept this a secret. When Alana discovered she had a rival, she became resolute in her determination to be the only woman in his life. The first year of their relationship was tumultuous, with they breaking up on 3 separate occasions, rekindling. This was largely due to Alana's persistence in pursuing the relationship. Despite her parents' awareness of the issues and their encouragement to leave Mohammed, Alana remained resolute, convinced that she had found her soulmate. Alana often showered Mohammed with gifts, surprises, and home-cooked meals, but he only sporadically reciprocated her affection. Mohammed seemed content to accept Alana's displays of love without feeling obligated to return them. This dynamic created an emotional imbalance, where Alana grew increasingly dependent on Mohammed. In the summer of 2004, Alana and Mohammed received unexpected news: Alana unplanned pregnancy. A sudden life-changing event forced them to rethink their future plans. While both were anxious about the news, Mohammed felt a strong obligation to marry Alana before the baby was born, as is traditional in his conservative Muslim upbringing. In September 2004, they had a 2-part wedding. The first ceremony adhered to Mohammed's family's cultural customs, while the second was a more casual celebration with friends at a popular restaurant. At the time, the newlyweds seemed happy and in love. However, their happiness was short-lived. When their daughter, Yasmin, was born in January 2005, their marital problems became apparent. Muhammad's focus on his career and education left Alana and their newborn daughter feeling neglected. To make matters worse, Muhammad had been hoping for a son and wasn't afraid to express his disappointment. This marked the beginning of a troubled marriage that would ultimately end in tragedy. After having her child, Alana took maternity leave to care for her daughter and manage the household. When Muhammad returned home, he would often go straight to his room and spend very little time with his wife and children, which left Alana feeling abandoned and unappreciated. As time passed, Muhammad's behavior worsened, and he became increasingly critical and abusive. He would insult Alana's appearance, refuse to eat her cooking, berating and insulting his wife. Despite her growing unhappiness, Alana chose not to confide in anyone, including her close friends and parents, about her marital problems. However, one day, while Alana was on the phone with her mother, Muhammad returned home in a bad mood and began berating Alana in front of her mother. Alana's mother tried to defend her, but Muhammad shifted the blame onto Alana, claiming she was responsible for their troubled marriage. Alana's mother advised her to end the relationship with Muhammad and file for divorce, but Alana declined, hoping that she could still salvage the marriage. Unfortunately, Muhammad's actions worsened, and he started physically harming Alana on top of the verbal abuse she had already been enduring. The situation reached a boiling point in the summer of 2005 when Muhammad punched Alana in the face, breaking her nose. Fearing for her safety and that of her child, Alana fled to friends and reported the incident to the police, finally deciding to end the marriage and leave Muhammad for good. Muhammad surprisingly begged his wife, Alana, to come back, vowing to never physically abuse her again or even raise his voice. He promised that their family life would be perfect, and he would control his temper. However, Muhammad's sudden change of heart was motivated by self-interest. As a young neurosurgeon, he was about to start at Duke University, working towards his doctorate, and a criminal conviction would ruin his promising medical career. Muhammad's primary concern was his own future, but he successfully convinced Alana to drop the charges against him. She even agreed to follow him to North Carolina, where he would pursue his studies. Alana's loved ones were confused when she didn't leave her husband despite the difficulties she was facing. Instead, she moved to another country with Muhammad. When they encouraged her to reconsider, she stood her ground. When the family settled in the US, life appeared more tranquil for a time. Muhammad earned a highly competitive spot in an elite engineering program. Meanwhile, Alana joined Duke University on a full tuition scholarship. Their relationship grew stronger and became more confident in their decision to have more children. After the arrival of their daughter Fiza, they welcomed another child. Unlike their son's relatively smooth birth, Fiza's delivery was more challenging. The new addition to the family brought immense joy, and they felt grateful for their family growing closer. What secrets lay hidden behind the perfect facade of this family? In the late summer of 2009, Alana and her husband, along with their children, returned to Ottawa, Canada, and settled back into their home. Alana, however, soon ended her maternity leave and secured a job as a family doctor at a renowned hospital, quickly building a solid reputation. Her husband, meanwhile, juggled work, studies, and teaching at a university. As social media gained popularity in the late 2000s, they started a personal blog that portrayed them as an ideal family. They shared photos of their vacations, accomplishments in science, and luxury lifestyle, complete with a lavish home. They even posted about attending prestigious conferences and trendy resorts. To outsiders, they seemed like a happy, successful, wealthy, and deeply in love couple with no problems. However, this perfect image hid a dark reality. Behind closed doors, Muhammad continued to exert strict control over Alana. He monitored her interactions, dictated what she wore, and even checked her email and social media accounts. He openly criticized her appearance, style, and parenting methods, leaving Alana feeling silent and trapped. As time passed, the tension and aggression between them became stressed, with Muhammad frequently yelling at Alana and blaming her for their arguments and discord. In 2011, a prestigious medical center in Calgary offered a talented neurosurgeon, Muhammad, a fellowship in spinal surgery. Muhammad accepted the offer and relocated to Calgary, but he had to leave his family in Ottawa because his wife, Alana, couldn't take a leave of absence from her job for over a year. They had to manage a long-distance relationship. During one of Muhammad's visits home, their relationship faced its biggest challenge yet. While at home, Muhammad accidentally left his laptop open, and Alana saw a message from another woman on his social media account. The content of the message implied a romantic involvement. When Alana confronted Muhammad, he confessed to having an affair, which was a devastating blow to Alana. Alana's family believed that this was the final straw, and they were convinced that she wouldn't forgive Muhammad again. However, Alana decided to give their marriage another chance. Muhammad promised to end the affair, and they decided to start fresh in Toronto, where Muhammad had secured a high-paying job. Despite this fresh start, their marital issues persisted. After their move to Toronto, Muhammad expressed his desire to have a son, and Alana agreed to try again, hoping that a new child would bring stability to their family. In October 2013, they had a son named Marius, a long-awaited addition to their family. Despite the new baby, his behavior towards his wife remained unchanged. Over the next few years, he devoted himself to his medical career, becoming a skilled and respected neurosurgeon known for his ability to tackle complex cases that other doctors avoided. Meanwhile, the wife also advanced in her career, becoming a representative for the Ontario Medical Association. However, the tension between them began to escalate, and his behavior towards his wife became increasingly aggressive. He went beyond verbal abuse, resorting to physical violence against her. During a family ski trip, the wife suffered a deep cut on her arm that required stitches, as well as other injuries. She initially claimed that the injuries were a result of a skiing accident. However, she later confided in her best friend that the injuries were actually inflicted by her husband. Following another heated argument over his latest infidelity, Alana discovered that her husband, Muhammad, was having an affair with a colleague. After overhearing a suspicious phone conversation, Alana confronted him, which led to a violent outburst, and he physically abused her. A friend, who was aware of the situation, advised Alana to end her marriage, but she refused. Her friend jokingly suggested that Alana should retaliate by having an affair of her own. Although the suggestion was made in jest, Alana might have considered it a viable option to get back at her unfaithful husband. During the summer of 2016, their relationship continued to deteriorate. Their children were away at camp or staying with their grandparents, leaving Alana and Muhammad to face their marital problems alone. In a surprising turn of events, they celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary in early September, even sharing the news on social media. However, their happiness was short-lived, as they began discussing divorce just a week later. Despite his marital transgressions, Muhammad refused to acknowledge his actions as grounds for divorce, claiming that he was happy with his current situation. On the other hand, a desperate Alana initiated an affair with a coworker who had been flirting with her, escalating their relationship turmoil. Alana found herself swept up in a new romance, feeling cherished and adored by her partner. This was a welcome change from her current situation, and she reveled in the long-absent sensation of being loved and desired. However, her personal life was about to take a dramatic turn. A fierce argument erupted in the family on November 25, 2016. Alana informed her husband that their divorce was unavoidable. The following day, she consulted with a divorce attorney and then departed for a 3-day medical conference in another city. While Elena was away, her husband, Muhammad, sent her a series of messages, begging her to reconsider and work on saving their marriage for the sake of their children. Elena returned home on November 30th and made a final phone call to her parents. Although her voice betrayed some anxiety, she reassured them that everything was okay. Unbeknownst to her family, Elena had attempted to call the police that evening, but in her distress, she accidentally misdialed the number, leading to a devastating outcome. On December 1st, Anna tried to contact her daughter Ilana but was unable to reach her. Concerned, Anna called her son-in-law Muhammad to ask what was wrong. Muhammad claimed that Ilana had packed her bags in the middle of the night and left him and their children to be with her lover. However, Anna and her husband were skeptical of Muhammad's story, knowing that their daughter would never abandon her children. They asked a close friend of Ilana's to keep an eye on the Muhammad home while they traveled to Toronto to report Ilana's disappearance to the police. The friend reported that Ilana's car was still parked in the driveway, which only added to the family's concern. When Anna and her husband arrived at their daughter's house, they didn't notice anything out of the ordinary at first. However, Muhammad was agitated and insisted that Ilana was with her lover, repeating the same story he had told the police earlier. After Ilana was reported missing, a shocking discovery was made. The police found a body inside a suitcase. A man walking his dog by the river on December 2nd noticed a new-looking suitcase under a bridge about 24 miles from the suspect Muhammad's home. His curiosity got the best of him, so he opened the suitcase, discovering the body of a blonde woman. The police were immediately notified, and the body was taken to the medical examiner for identification and analysis. Fortunately, identifying the owner of the suitcase was not difficult because the perpetrator had left the luggage tag attached, which still had her name and travel information from her recent trip. Her parents confirmed the identity as Ilana. An autopsy revealed her cause of death to be mechanical asphyxiation and a broken neck. Additionally, her body showed signs of abuse with multiple bruises and abrasions. Notably, the victim was found dressed in pajamas with no shoes. Considering the victim's position in clothes, it appears she was placed inside the suitcase immediately after her death. The investigation led to the suspect's arrest later that evening at a coffee shop. Evidence indicated he was planning to leave the country. A lawyer accompanied the suspect during his meeting at the time of arrest. However, law enforcement thwarted the escape. Subsequently, Muhammad, the prime witness turned suspect, was arrested, formally charging him with Ilana's first-degree murder. Muhammad denied any involvement in the incident, but a disturbing detail soon came to light. Their 12-year-old daughter, Yasmin, had unintentionally witnessed her mother's murder. Yasmin reported hearing screams and noise coming from her parents' room, prompting her to rush there. She opened the door slightly and saw her father kneeling behind the bed, while her mother was likely on the floor, out of her sight. Muhammad ordered Yasmin to leave the room immediately, shut the door, and go back to bed. The next morning, he told his daughters that their mother had left. Despite her young age, Yasmin sensed that something terrible had occurred, but she couldn't fathom that her father was responsible for her mother's death. To avoid putting his daughter through the trauma of testifying in court, the accused confessed to the crime. He recounted the events of that fateful evening, stating that he and his wife had argued over her alleged infidelity and desire for a divorce. Muhammad claimed that he didn't intend to harm his wife, but the situation escalated rapidly. The argument turned violent, and when his wife tried to call the police, he knocked the phone out of her hand. She began screaming, and Muhammad struck her multiple times in the face before pinning her to the floor and strangling her with his hands. Muhammad's daughter entered the room, but couldn't see what had happened behind the bed. By the time Muhammad realized his wife was not breathing, it was too late. In a desperate attempt to revive her, he made a fatal mistake, breaking her neck. Panicked, he placed her body in a large suitcase and drove around for hours, unsure of what to do. Eventually, He stopped at a small bridge over a river and threw the suitcase into the water, hoping the current would carry it away. However, the suitcase got stuck against the bridge's foundation, hidden in the darkness. During the trial of the surgeon, a scandal emerged involving his father, Ferd Shamji. The elderly man made derogatory comments about his deceased daughter-in-law, trying to justify his son's actions by claiming she had been unfaithful and provoked him. As a result, his medical license was revoked. Muhammad was found guilty of second-degree murder in April 2019 and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he may be eligible for parole in 14 years, considering the time he served during the trial. This means he could be released as early as 2030. Additionally, Muhammad was prohibited from contacting his children or his wife's parents and was ordered to pay them a substantial amount of compensation. His medical license was also permanently revoked, preventing him from practicing medicine or teaching again. The children who have lost their parents are now being cared for by Ilana's parents. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lily James. Lily was born in the coastal town of Saintsue, New South Wales, Australia in May 2002. She was the first child of the close-knit James family and was especially loved by her maternal grandmother, Barbara. Growing up, Lily spent much of her time by the ocean with her younger brother Max, where she developed a passion for swimming and an active lifestyle. Her father, a water polo coach at an Anglican girls' school in Hustville, encouraged her interest in the sport. Those who knew Lily remembered her as a friendly and outgoing person who excelled in her studies and was always willing to help those in need. Her well-rounded personality made her a standout student, and she was widely respected by her peers. With her impressive talent and dedication, Lily succeeded in multiple areas, including academia, sports, and community service. She was also an accomplished performer, participating in her school's theater and dance club. Eventually, Lily's talents caught the attention of organizers from the prestigious Woodford Folk Festival, one of Australia's largest annual events, attracting over 125,000 attendees from around the world. As part of the celebrations, Lily performed a unique monologue from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Her performance showcased her impressive skills, charisma, and stage presence, earning her a standing ovation and the jury's approval. She achieved second place in the theater category, a remarkable achievement that earned her recognition and a significant prize. In 2018, Lily achieved another milestone when she passed her beginner's driving test. Her athletic talents also flourished, particularly in water polo, a sport she began competing in professionally, following in her father's footsteps. She won the title of swimming champion in the under-17 category, a feat that delighted her parents. By her final year of school, Lily had decided to pursue a career in sports, and in 2020, she enrolled at Sydney Technological University to study sports business management. A turning point in her life. In early 2021, she started a new chapter. To break up her college routine and gain teaching experience, she took a job as a water polo coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School. Her youthful energy, vibrant personality, and passion for sports quickly won over her colleagues, the school administration, and the students she was coaching. The students looked up to her and tried to meet her high standards. In return, she sought to understand each student's unique needs and strengths. That's when she met Paul, the new cricket and hockey coach. His impressive skills and charismatic presence quickly made him the center of attention. As a part-time teacher at another school and a member of the University of New South Wales hockey team, Paul was a driven and accomplished young man. He was particularly popular among the female students and staff. However, opinions about him were divided. Some saw him as arrogant and stubborn, while others appreciated his positive qualities. Initially, Lily and Paul's interactions were friendly but brief, limited to exchanging greetings. Over time, their relationship evolved into something more. Lily's friends reported that Paul asked her out on a date, and she found it difficult to say no due to his charming smile. The date had a profound impact on both of them, leading to a decision to meet again. As Lily got to know Paul better, she began to develop feelings for him, unaware of his true nature. Her kindness and openness made her vulnerable to falling in love. Paul appeared to return her affection, frequently complimenting her, giving her flowers, and planning evenings together. They decided to keep their relationship a secret, especially from the students at school. Lily and her boyfriend, Paul, had agreed to keep their relationship private, adhering to the school's policy and Lily's personal preference for discretion. However, as time passed, rumors about their relationship began to circulate, evolving from hushed whispers to open discussions. When Lily discovered that Paul was the one who had revealed their relationship, she felt deeply hurt and betrayed. Paul's portrayal of her had also led to criticism and judgment from others, causing Lily to feel humiliated. As a result, she confronted Paul about his actions and ended their relationship. Despite Paul's subsequent attempts to apologize and reconcile, Lily remained resolute in her decision. She took some comfort in the fact that their relationship had been brief, allowing her to see Paul's true nature before things escalated further. Paul was born in 1999 in the Netherlands to a wealthy and influential family. When his father's job required a relocation to Australia in 2015, Paul and his family made the move. As an only child, Paul received excessive attention and care from his parents, which significantly contributed to his character development. Unfortunately, this upbringing led to Paul growing up with an entitled and self-centered attitude. Paul was a high-achieving student who excelled academically, athletically, and was physically fit. After moving to a new location, he attended St. Andrew's Cathedral School, where he joined the cricket team and quickly gained recognition and respect from his peers for his exceptional skills. He eventually became the team captain and actively participated in organizing extracurricular activities and festivals. While he was well-liked by many, particularly they who found him charming, some of his male peers were put off by his confidence and boasts about his ability to win over any girl. Despite this, Paul's charm and charisma earned him many admirers. After graduating in 2017, the school administration offered him a position as an assistant coach for cricket and hockey, which he gladly accepted. He quickly took on a leadership role and successfully managed these sections, feeling confident in his abilities. However, by early 2018, he surprisingly resigned and returned home with his family, citing unknown reasons for his departure. Back home, Paul decided to further his education and earned a master's degree in sports management. Paul had a conversation with old friends and mentioned that he had improved his coaching skills, which led to a job offer from his former employer. He returned to Australia and started working at the familiar school in early 2020. To reduce living expenses, Paul agreed to share an apartment with a friend in Kensington, a suburb of Sydney. Initially, they enjoyed each other's company, socializing after work. However, a few months later, they had a disagreement, and Paul decided to live alone. His parents, who he couldn't visit due to the pandemic, felt that Paul was lonely despite being busy and surrounded by people. They weren't aware of any romantic relationships in his life. By the summer of 2021, as Paul resumed his regular activities, people began to notice a change in his behavior and personality. He picked up where he left off in the sports world, regaining his status as a key player on the hockey team and continuing his active lifestyle, even featuring in promotional advertisements. At the same time, those who knew him observed emerging characteristics that were not present before. Uncontrollable outbursts of anger became a concern. Furthermore, rumors circulated within the school community about his unusual interest in his female students. He would often engage in flirtatious behavior with teenage girls, staring at them for extended periods, leaving them visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed. Paul's importance in the hockey team's progress to the Australian Hockey League finals was evident despite the turmoil in his personal life. His recent breakup with Lily was likely a significant blow to his ego. Unexpected, on October 26, 2023, at approximately 4:30 a.m., the principal of St. Andrew's Cathedral School in central Sydney sent an email to students and parents announcing the school's closure until the end of the week due to a critical incident. A tragedy occurred at the school, prompting a thorough investigation. On Thursday and Friday, a 24-hour consultation center was established in the school library to support those affected. Forensic teams meticulously searched the school building and surrounding area, gathering evidence. The gym was closed off, and the adjacent shower area was scheduled for demolition due to the disturbing discovery made there. The incident began to unfold when the body of a 20-year-old woman was found in the shower around midnight. She had been seen alive just hours earlier. The water polo coach had entered the shower but never emerged. Surveillance footage revealed that someone had followed her around 8 p.m., but the pursuer left the area alone, heading towards the school exit. A family member was later asked to identify the body due to severe facial damage. The victim was identified as Lily James. As the police delved deeper into the case, surveillance footage played a crucial role, and the prime suspect, a young man, was caught on camera multiple times. Investigations were launched into Paul and Lily's cell phone records, helping police track the suspect's last known location using GPS. They also sought to recover the victim's phone, hoping to uncover evidence through text messages that could shed light on the events leading up to the crime. After successfully locating the devices, the police reconstructed the sequence of events, revealing that Paul had purchased a hammer from a hardware store just days before the crime. It seemed he was consumed by anger toward the victim and had planned a confrontation. On the morning of October 25, Lily followed her routine, attending the university and then heading to her job in the afternoon. Unbeknownst to her, her ex-boyfriend had other plans. Paul rented a silver Lexus and drove to the school, avoiding the building since he had no classes scheduled. He waited in the car, patiently biding his time. Once the students cleared out, he walked into the gym, concealing a hammer under his jacket to avoid drawing attention. From this vantage point, Paul observed Lily's movements, lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. When Lily finished her training session and decided to take a shower, Paul saw his chance and followed her. An argument erupted, and in the heat of the moment, Paul attacked Lily, striking her head with the hammer. According to the pathologists, the impact was fatal, and Lily died instantly, without suffering. After waiting for an hour, Paul collected Lily's belongings and left the building. He then drove to Diamond Bay, where he disposed of the weapon in a trash can. Security cameras captured footage of him at the reserve at 8:47 p.m. His last known location, as tracked by investigators, was the Gap, a cliff in the eastern Sydney suburb of Vaucluse. As the community was still reeling from the initial tragedy, another shocking event occurred. On October 27, at 8 a.m., shopkeepers at Diamond Bay Reserve in Sydney's eastern suburbs made a disturbing discovery. A man's body was found just 11 miles away from the site of the first crime. A rescue team, including a bomb squad and Marine Corps personnel, was formed to retrieve the body. The body was recovered at 3:30 p.m. and taken for identification. Due to severe injuries, fingerprints were used to identify the individual. The victim was 24-year-old Paul, the same person who had been at the scene of the first crime. The investigation team faced a significant challenge in establishing a connection between the fatal incidents and uncovering the circumstances surrounding the events. The Gap is a notorious location with a history of suicides. Around 10 p.m., Paul used Lily's phone to send a message to her father, possibly revealing the location of her body. An hour later, the young man made a brief emergency call, but hung up quickly. When police arrived at the cliff, They found the personal belongings of Lily and Paul, but there was no sign of him. A rented car was parked nearby, suggesting that he may have taken his own life due to feelings of guilt or fear of facing the consequences of his actions. On October 26, police launched a search operation for his body, using helicopters and boats to scour the coastline. The first day's efforts were unsuccessful, but the next day, a body was found on rocks in a nearby nature reserve. With Paul deceased, the case was closed, and his parents collected his body, opting to cremate it in Sydney. A meeting was subsequently arranged with Tim Watson Monroe, a renowned forensic psychologist with extensive experience in analyzing the behavior of both criminals and victims. Mr. Watson Monroe was asked to share his insights on the incident and analyze the behavior of the perpetrator, Paul. According to Mr. Watson Monroe, Paul's actions were characteristic of individuals with an inflated sense of self-importance who struggle to accept rejection. He believed that Paul committed the crime in a premeditated and calculating manner, showing no remorse for his actions. When asked about Paul's decision to end his own life, Mr. Watson Monroe provided an explanation. Mr. Watson portrays Paul as a self-centered individual with psychopathic traits. Some have compared the tragic events to the finale of Romeo and Juliet, but the story of Lily and Paul is unique and unfolds in a distinct way. A genuine love relationship cannot thrive with pride, dishonesty, and betrayal. Unfortunately, Paul failed to grasp this, leading him to overlook the value of the person beside him. His decision to prioritize his own wounded ego ultimately resulted in the loss of a bright and vibrant life. This not only caused lasting pain for Lily's family but also for Paul's own loved ones. Regrettably, his actions left a devastating impact on those around him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Van Eck. Michael Van Eck was born on August 14, 1987, in a city that was once a hub for gold miners. He was the only son among four sisters, Natasha, Michelle, Bianca, and Friana, and grew up in a close-knit family. His parents were caring and provided a comfortable life for their children. Michael's father worked hard to establish his own business, while his mother created a nurturing environment at home that encouraged the growth and development of her children. Michael was a sociable and kind person who excelled in school and sports, earning a black belt in karate that gave him confidence. After completing his education, Michael trained as an electrician, a highly sought-after profession that offered good earnings and job prospects. He worked at the Beatrix mine in the small town of Unison, where he was employed at mine number 4. Not content to rest on his laurels, Michael continued his education to become an engineer. In 2011, Michael, then 23 years old, joined a dating site to cope with a recent breakup and expand his social circle. It seemed like a stroke of luck when he came across the profile of a sweet and smiling young woman that caught his eye. During the ongoing conversation, the man discovered that they shared common interests. Similar to him, she disliked loud parties and excessive drinking, and sought a genuine, meaningful relationship and a strong family foundation. Michael was pleasantly surprised to find a compatible match online. Living with his parents at the time, he shared his excitement and concerns with his mother. On April 2nd, he confided in her about his upcoming date and made an effort to prepare and make a good impression. He withdrew his first paycheck of 1,000 Rand from his account. The only thing that gave him pause was the unusual location his online friend had chosen for their first meeting, the city cemetery. To avoid worrying his parents, he kept this detail to himself. Around 9 p.m. that evening, Michael bid farewell to his family and left the house. He drove to the designated location in his silver Pajero 2007, a gift from his parents for his 18th birthday. As expected, she was running a bit late, but her appearance was striking. She from the internet arrived dressed in a pristine white dress and smiled warmly. The conversation flowed easily, and afterwards, she suggested continuing the evening elsewhere in the cemetery. She invited him to a secluded area with a blanket spread out on the grass, accompanied by a basket of fruit and wine. Michael and his friends had just finished their drinks when his beautiful companion suddenly kissed him. At first, the kiss was pleasant, but it quickly turned into a painful and horrific experience. Unbeknownst to Michael, this kiss was the beginning of a sinister plot. Jane Van Heerden was born in 1991 to parents who were struggling in their marriage. When her mother discovered she was pregnant, they decided to put their divorce on hold and try to work through their issues. However, their efforts were unsuccessful, and the situation at home continued to deteriorate. Unfortunately for Jane, her mother resented her presence, seeing her as a constant reminder of her unhappy marriage. Even after the divorce, Jane's mother held on to her negative feelings, making it difficult for Jane to feel loved and accepted. Jane's behavioral issues and cold demeanor towards her children persisted even after her marriage ended. As a result, her 3 children felt isolated and misunderstood, with Jane, in particular, struggling the most. From a young age, she became withdrawn and sullen, displaying psychological problems. Her behavior became increasingly disturbing, as she frequently talked about death and created confusing artwork. She also developed an imaginary friend named Azael. Her grandparents, concerned about her well-being, suspected she might be possessed and took her to church for an exorcism. During the ritual, Jane's body convulsed, which was likely due to her fear of crowds and the intense anxiety she felt during the ordeal, possibly triggering an epileptic seizure. The traumatic experience had a lasting impact on her memory, causing her to develop a deep-seated fear of the dark. This phobia was further exacerbated by her mother's frightening statement that toys come to life at night, leading Jane to take drastic measures to protect herself, such as taping her doll's eyes shut and restraining them with shoelaces. Jane's mental condition took a turn for the worse as she entered preteen years. At 10 years old, she had a disturbing episode where she threatened a family guest with a knife while visiting her father. This incident prompted her family to seek professional help, and she was evaluated by a specialist who prescribed sedatives. The medication had a positive impact on her mood and overall well-being for a time. During a period of calm, Jane's father made a conscious effort to spend more time with her, often picking her up from school and taking her on hunting trips. He hoped that by sharing his hobby, he could provide her with the attention and connection she craved. Jane found enjoyment in her father's activities, particularly in tasks like butchering and skinning animals. However, this fascination led her to begin collecting and bringing home the carcasses of small animals, starting with rats and birds, and escalating to cats and dogs. She also took to cutting flesh and occasionally self-inflicted injuries. As it turned out, around age 12, Jane had befriended a man who introduced her to substance use and took advantage of her vulnerability. Fortunately, she ended the toxic relationship on her own, although her sisters had initially kept the situation hidden from their parents. Jane's emotional state was negatively affected by her chaotic childhood. At the age of 15, her mother left for New Zealand, where she started a new relationship and never returned to care for her children. Jane and her siblings were left in the care of their father and stepmother, who did their best to provide for them, but struggled to understand the depth of Jane's emotional issues. Her family initially attributed her behavior to typical teenage struggles. However, her situation took a turn for the worse when she became involved with a 22-year-old man who was interested in Satanism, occultism, and voodoo cults. He had a profound influence on Jane, but his cruel nature often left her feeling belittled and suppressed. Fortunately, Jane's life began to turn around with the support of her family and therapy. By the time she turned 17, she had distanced herself from the negative influences in her life, graduated from high school, and enrolled in college to study art and graphic design. As she lost interest in Satanism and stopped using substances that were harming her, her emotional well-being began to improve. Chang thrived in her studies and landed a job in her field, where she received support from both her colleagues and management. She discovered a natural talent for visual arts, earning her respect and recognition in her profession. At the same time, she began a romantic relationship with a man named Warren. To those outside her inner circle, Chang's life seemed perfectly ordinary. Her family and close friends avoided discussing her past, hoping that the difficult times were behind her. However, it was unclear what was happening beneath the surface. It's possible that her inner struggles were simply waiting to resurface. Her father, in particular, was overjoyed for Chang, believing she had finally found stability and would soon get married. However, his expectations were not fulfilled. A surprising challenge arose from Warren's friend Roy, a self-proclaimed sensitive person. Although Chang came across as kind and friendly, Roy detected something off-putting and even evil about her. He suspected that Chang might be unfaithful to his friend, so he decided to confront her about it. However, instead of answering his question, Chang became enraged and spat in his face, telling him to stop asking her ridiculous questions. At a party, Chang noticed Martin, a 24-year-old from a well-respected family. Despite his calm and sociable nature, rumors surrounded him. Born into a privileged family, Martin had a happy childhood, excelling academically and behaving well. However, at 6, he began experiencing hallucinations, convinced by an entity that he possessed incredible strength. As he grew older, his mental health declined, and his behavior changed due to struggles at school and home. At 14, Martin was hospitalized for psychiatric treatment and diagnosed with schizophrenia. Unfortunately, standard treatments were ineffective. His financially secure family dedicated themselves to finding alternative medications, eventually discovering the necessary drugs to control his condition, except for occasional aggressive outbursts. Martin was deeply affected by witnessing a stray cat being attacked by dogs. Instead of feeling revulsion or sympathy, he chose to hide the cat's body and observe it. This disturbing incident marked the beginning of his animal torture. He eventually dropped out of school and started working with his father in the carpentry shop, aspiring to follow in his family's footsteps. As he worked, his condition showed signs of improvement, and he lost the desire to harm animals. Feeling in control, he made the decision to stop taking his medication, despite concerns from those around him. However, this decision ultimately proved to be a grave mistake. Martin's mental state gradually declined, and it was during this time that he met Chang. Their relationship seemed happy and normal to outsiders, and their parents were initially pleased with their union. But neither set of parents was aware of the dark history of their children, and their relationship ultimately led to devastating consequences. Initially, they was outgoing and social, attending parties and interacting with others. However, acquaintances began to notice cuts on their hands, which they jokingly attributed to intimate experiments. Over time, they became increasingly reclusive and developed an interest in dark and occult practices, including Satanism and voodoo cults. They also became fascinated with notorious serial killers. In February 2011, Martin posted a photo of himself and Chang on social media, with the caption, "Killers," accompanied by a cryptic emoji. At the time, no one suspected that the post was anything more than a joke. Meanwhile, Martin asked Chang's father for permission to marry her, which was met with enthusiasm. However, unbeknownst to those around them, they harbored a sinister secret. Instead of dreaming of a future together, they fantasized about ending their lives in a violent manner. These dark fantasies eventually evolved into a twisted plan to torture and kill homeless individuals. They even practiced their twisted intentions on animals, due to unable to find a suitable human victim to carry out their heinous plan. Chang created a profile on a dating site, which caught the attention of a young man named Michael Van Eck. Chang and her partner, Martin, targeted Michael for their sinister plans. They began flirting with Michael online, and after a few days, Chane suggested they meet in person. Despite the unusual location, Michael agreed to the meeting. Chane and Martin carefully planned the encounter, considering every detail, including their attire and the means to commit a crime. Chane approached the meeting prepared, while Martin hid behind tombstones, waiting for a signal. When Chane kissed Michael, it was the agreed-upon signal for Martin to attack. He struck Michael with a knife from behind, but Michael unexpectedly resisted. Chane intervened, and together they inflicted around 30 knife wounds on Michael. As Michael begged for an end to his suffering, Martin slit his throat, ultimately killing him. The perpetrators then dragged the body onto a blanket and began to carry out their plan. They cut off the victim's legs at the knee and severed his head. The dismembered body parts were placed in bags. The perpetrators attempted to bury the body at the site, but they encountered a problem that they had no shovels. As a result, they were forced to dig a shallow grave using only their hands and knives. After managing to bury the body only halfway, the perpetrators left the scene, taking the severed body parts with them. They used the victim's vehicle to make their getaway, with Martin initially driving, but later handing over control to his accomplice. However, the adrenaline rush from their crime made it difficult for them to focus on the road. Once they arrived home, they stored the bags containing the body parts in the refrigerator, treating them like ordinary groceries. After Martin had somewhat composed himself, he got into the victim's car and drove it to a high-crime neighborhood, hoping that it would be stolen. He left the car unlocked with the keys in the ignition to make it an easy target. A cemetery worker noticed bloody stains and torn clothing in the bushes near the grave. After alerting his supervisor, they called the authorities to report the gruesome find. The police were immediately notified, and an investigation was launched. Meanwhile, Michael Van Eck's parents were frantic with worry. Their son had been unreachable since the previous evening, which was unusual, even if he had stayed overnight with his internet girlfriend. When Michael failed to show up for work, his employer called his parents to ask about his absence. Around the same time, police received a report about an abandoned car with blood stains on the trunk. The vehicle was identified as belonging to Michael Van Eck through a database search. Further investigation revealed that the car had been parked at the cemetery for an extended period. With this new information, police officers visited the Van Eck residence, where they confirmed their suspicions. Michael's mother had been searching for him since the previous day. The officers then asked her to come to the cemetery, where forensic experts and search dogs were working to locate missing body parts. The investigation revealed that the victim's mother identified her son's body through distinctive burn marks he had sustained in childhood. The autopsy confirmed that the victim had suffered multiple knife wounds and showed signs of a struggle. The body had been dismembered after death, which suggested that the perpetrators had some level of expertise in this area. The number and nature of the wounds, as well as the strength required to subdue the victim, indicated that multiple attackers were involved. DNA testing later confirmed the identity of the victim as 23-year-old Michael Van Eck. During the investigation, police seized the victim's cell phone and computer, which revealed that the last person he had communicated with was Chane Van Heerden. According to their messages, she had invited him to meet at the cemetery on the night of his death. Detectives brought Chane in for questioning, and she arrived with her boyfriend, Martin. Both were interviewed separately and eventually confessed to being involved in the victim's murder. Upon learning of the incident, Chane's father rushed to the station, where he was shocked to hear the accusations against his daughter. When he asked her if the allegations were true, Chane calmly confirmed her involvement and stated that she would willingly do it again. She claimed that she had fantasized about committing such a crime ever since she started hunting with her father. This cruel confession shocked not only her father but also everyone present. As the case gained public attention, Chane's boyfriend, Martin, also showed no remorse. Instead, he seemed to enjoy the public scrutiny and posed for cameras. It became clear that neither Chane nor Martin felt any regret for their actions. Investigations revealed that they had planned to take their own lives if caught, but Martin's changed his mind, and Chane followed suit. They wanted to live a life of notoriety, embracing their dark impulses. A search of their apartment revealed a disturbing environment. The walls were adorned with distorted portraits of Chane, depicting her without eyes, mouth, or ears. The rooms also contained ritual items, animal scalps, knives, and other objects of unclear purpose. Police found the deceased young man's belongings, including his glasses and wallet, which Martins later confessed they had taken to prepare their next crime. The most disturbing discovery was made in the refrigerator, where police found Michael's severed head with his mouth sewn shut. It is believed that the perpetrators intended to use his head as a ritualistic bowl. The victim's eyes and ears were found in separate containers. Additionally, the victim's hand and leg were discovered buried near the murderer's home, alongside the remains of various animals. The perpetrator's diary revealed horrific thoughts and plans for future crimes. The evidence collected during the investigation made it clear that the perpetrators had planned to commit multiple crimes, and that the process of taking lives and mutilating bodies brought them immense pleasure. Martin and Chane underwent multiple evaluations to assess their mental competence. The commission confirmed that they were aware of their actions and understood the consequences. In November 2011, Chane's trial took place. Despite this being her first offense, she was treated as a serial offender. She openly expressed her desire to repeat her actions and told the court that she understood she should feel shame or remorse, but couldn't. She could only comprehend the severity of her actions through societal standards and the reactions of others. Psychiatrists diagnosed Chane with psychopathic and antisocial disorders, which made her more dangerous than her boyfriend. However, she was skilled at hiding her true nature. Throughout the sentencing, Chane remained impassive. She was found guilty and sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole, 20 years for taking a life and an additional 15 years for robbery and dismemberment. Martin defended himself in court, claiming he didn't remember the events until he was in jail. He admitted to studying Satanism and occultism, and said his relationship with Chane led them to commit the crime. He apologized to the victim's parents, but his words seemed insincere. He was found guilty and sentenced to 35 years in prison, with a chance for parole after serving half his sentence. Even in prison, Martin expressed his passion for Chane in letters, calling her a dark goddess. However, Chane eventually ended the relationship, feeling they had grown apart. While incarcerated, Chane proved to be a model prisoner, using her time to teach art and theology to her fellow inmates. In contrast, Martin, while also in prison, gained a small group of admirers who were carefully monitored by police to prevent them from copying his crimes. During his imprisonment, Martins focused on personal growth, completing his education through correspondence courses and undergoing therapy. Their stories serve as a warning that ordinary individuals can hide dark secrets. Michael, a kind and compassionate person, was manipulated by two individuals with twisted motivations. This tragic event emphasizes the importance of being cautious about the people we surround ourselves with, as their influence can have a profound and lasting impact on our lives.